people working for Border Force and Immigration have been charged with spying for China. Meanwhile, his Safety of Rwanda bill coming unstuck in Northern Ireland. I'll bring you the details shortly.
The Prime Minister is set to welcome farmers to Downing Street as he announces new support for agriculture.
And is Britain entering a new era of naval shipbuilding? We'll be asking the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps at 6:45 ahead of the first Sea Lords Sea Power Conference later today.
And in the sport this morning, late comeback from Aston Villa gives them a 3-3 draw with Liverpool and puts them 1 point away from qualifying for the Champions League. But a win for Spurs tonight against Manchester City could hand their rivals Arsenal the title. But, are you following me? Still leave them with a chance of Champions League. Oh, the dilemma. And the run-up to Tyson Fury's undisputed World Heavyweight Championship fight with Alexander Usyk. It's Tyson's dad who's stealing the headlines.
Dull, damp day for many today, but it will be brighter for parts of Wales and southwest England compared to yesterday, and northern Scotland may well be the warm spot. Join me later for a full forecast.
Right, a very good morning to you. A number of things to talk about today. Big wildlife report today, and an article for the newspaper, which is saying that the heads of the National Trust, the Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, the Wildlife Trust and the Woodland Trust have warned that despite legal targets being set to improve biodiversity by 2030, this country is falling far short of the political will and financial investment needed in wildlife. We're going to be reflecting that in the programme today.
Huge loss of biodiversity.
Is British nature in crisis, OK? And the paper is saying that every political party is failing to do anything about wildlife. And it's interesting that there's this farmers' conference at Downing Street today. Is this a subject that will be raised, or is it the big taboo that
Well,
dare not be
it's a huge
mentioned?
political miscalculation because the British public actually really cares about wildlife. We love to see foxes, we love to see hedgehogs, badgers, whatever it might be. Sometimes, as you say, that's in conflict with farming. But it's really important. It's absolute fabric of Britain, really, having our wildlife healthy, and it looks as though we're having huge problems with that. So we'll be talking about that.
A good point is red squirrels. Who gives the monkeys? They don't care. People don't care. They could always talk, oh, red squirrels are lovely, but they do nothing about protecting them. And they let these rats, these grey squirrels, just infiltrate absolutely everywhere. And they're not native to this country. So what do you think about the state of your wildlife? Let us know this morning if you want to reflect it, if you want to talk about it, or is it not important?
Well, give us an audit of what you see on a typical week in your garden. You know, what do you look out for out of your window? Do you see a woodpecker quite often? Do you look out for a badger? Or lots of people in the cities in this country see foxes and enjoy that. So let us know what you see the most of and what you would miss if it disappeared.
Birds. I like looking at birds.
We just got this app where you go out into the garden, put the app on, and it tells you all the different...
Song.
Yeah, and then it told us 5 or so birds we didn't even know we had. And at the weekend I heard a cuckoo, an actual cuckoo. I was over the moon with that.
Woodpeckers.
Cuckoo.
We hear a lot of woodpeckers.
Beautiful.
Do you ever hear woodpecker?
Yes, woodpecker pecking.
So anyway, let us know. Give us an insight to that. We'll try and reflect that sort of idea throughout the programme today. We begin talking about weight loss, and a groundbreaking new study has found drugs like Ozempic can reduce the risk of heart and stroke by a fifth.
So cardiologists have said that these weight loss jabs are the most significant development in heart disease since 1990 and are a game changer for heart patients. So we hear increasing amounts, don't we, about these weight loss jabs, and increasingly the benefits that are linked. We should point out, though, and perhaps we don't talk enough about the negatives associated with all of this, because I was just chatting to a friend who wants to lose a bit of weight before she has another baby, and there has been this increase in fertility linked to Ozempic, and also this increase in birth defects. So it's not without its problems. Yes, it's a game changer if it's going to be saving lots of lives, but I don't think it's like this cure-all, fix everything. You know, probably the best way to lose weight always eat less, exercise more. But I think in extreme cases, this is obviously
What do you mean
breakthrough.
Ozempic leads to increased fertility?
Well, women often, and men,
I mean, just people are more attractive looking, and
no,
then they...
just if you're overweight, sometimes it can make having a baby more difficult. So you'll notice that if you take Ozempic and you start to lose weight, you'll suddenly become more fertile, which is also then led to people getting pregnant without expecting to, and then finding that they're having these birth defects, which is really, really sad. It's been found in animals.
So although the idea is you're to lose weight and look better looking by losing weight, this is not what this is about today. This is about better heart health. Yeah. And avoiding things like strokes and
yeah, and they're describing it as almost a statin, a new statin, which doesn't involve an invasive procedure, because anyone who's had a statin, you know that it goes up through the arm and into the heart, and then it gets inflated and helps with the movement through your arteries. But this is just a simple injection in your arm. What?
That's not what a statin is.
No, that's something else, isn't it?
No, that's some... What are you talking about?
What am I thinking?
Statin's a tablet.
So my mum had a heart attack, and what did she have? Through a artery that goes into your veins and inflates. So someone tell me now. I've got that muddled with statin.
Yeah, but it's not called a statin.
Oh,
Statin's a
dear,
tablet.
someone help me. Anybody. Oh, nobody knows what I'm talking about. Do you know what I mean? When people go and have those blow up in their heart.
Yes, but
I'm going to look it up and come back to you on that one.
It's not a statin.
Sorry, forgive me, it's early. We haven't got a guest to talk about this. You might have guessed, so we're talking about it, but we will have guests later on in the programme talking about it this morning.
Well, I could have talked about it perfectly.
Go on, then.
I didn't make science up there.
OK, well, you keep talking while I will look up what it's called.
Anyway, I'll tell you about China now.
Procedure. Go on, then.
China, you know, it's always funny. China does nothing, never interferes with anything, whatever. And they've reacted furiously, after 3 men were charged yesterday over spying for Hong Kong.
Yes, and they weren't just casual members of the public. They'd infiltrated the Home Office and the Border Force. So we had a Home Office immigration official among the 3 accused of carrying out hostile reconnaissance on behalf of the Foreign Intelligence Service.
Let's go to our political correspondent. She'll tell us more about this. Good morning, Catherine Foster.
Good morning, Eamonn and Isabel. Yes, really quite concerning this, isn't it? So these 3 have been charged, and one of them was working at Heathrow Airport as part of our border force. Another one was working within the Home Office and on immigration. So quite incredible. The Home Office have, not surprisingly, launched a review now into their recruitment and vetting procedures. They have been charged basically with spying on Hong Kong dissidents. Of course, we welcomed over 100,000 Hong Kongers into the country a couple of years ago when they went back to China, and China really started behaving in a way which I suppose was to be expected, but not what had been agreed with us. These 3 men are charged with trying to break in to a Hong Kong dissident's home a couple of weeks ago. Now, China, of course, are saying we strongly condemn the UK's unwarranted accusation. But this National Security Act that was brought in last year, this was brought in to allow us to counter better threats from hostile states. And Tom Tugendhat, the security minister, says that it's a game changer. Of course, these charges of these men come not that long after men were charged for spying for China in the heart of Westminster. So it raises more questions, doesn't it, about the very pervasive influence of China and interference of China within the United Kingdom itself. But of course, we're economically so entangled with China that it makes standing up to them very, very difficult.
That's the dilemma. Thank you very much indeed, Catherine. We'll leave it there. We can bring you an update on the balloon that blows up inside you and enlarges your veins and things, which is not a statin.
It's a stent. God bless your say. There's 1,000 messages going, it's a stent, Isabel, exclamation mark. I'm sorry, forgive me. So it's not being dubbed the new stent, it's being dubbed the new statin, the Ozempic jab. So forgive me. We will have experts explaining this a little bit later on. Also, on Your Say this morning, lots of you talking about the wildlife that they love to see. We were talking about the degradation of our wildlife. Kirsty Catt says, I see foxes, badgers, deer, and have a hedgehog in my hedgehog house that I built. This is until my council starts building houses on our greenbelt land. Philip...
There's enough greenbelt. Stop worrying about greenbelt.
Not if it backs onto them.
Look, fly over the whole country. What colour is it? It's green. Right, you're fine, your green belt's okay. Stop everybody panicking about this. In your area, it may be blotted out, but the country is green.
Well, for now.
That's all fine.
Well, you know, how long will that last? Philip says, I live in the countryside. I see rabbits and squirrels daily, sometimes a beaver. A couple of times a stoat has turned up. What's missing is sparrows. And then Ruth has said, leave the grey squirrels alone. I didn't like you taking umbrage at them. And Colin has made us laugh this morning, saying, send the grey squirrels to Rwanda. We're probably against their human rights.
They're basically just grey rats. That's what they are. They're not indigenous to the country, and red squirrels is where it should be. There are pockets of red squirrels. There's in Wales, for instance, there's a whole area full of them. And they can only really exist on islands and
red squirrels.
Like that. Yeah,
my brother's got red squirrels in his garden, but he's Highlands of Scotland in the middle of nowhere, and they see them every day, and that's a real treat for the children when we're up there. But you're absolutely right; they're really, really rare, and it's really sad. Oh.
So anyway, British nature is in crisis. Let us know about that, and what are we doing about it? I always say this. I say this to any politician. I say to any of them, come on today. They don't care.
I know.
There's no votes in it for them. They don't care. They have no interest. This nonsense where they entertain farmers at Downing Street, whatever it is, they don't care.
Yeah.
They go through this come election time. They pretend they care. They don't care. They don't care about our food supplies. They don't care about
our rivers.
Our farmers in general. Could you do that as a living? That is a tough job to do. But politicians don't care. But come elections, they go, oh, we've got to pretend we care about this. But they don't care, OK? So the Prime Minister is welcoming those farmers this morning to Number 10. I care. It's brilliant. It's fantastic. We are friends of the farmers. It's the second UK Farm to Fork Summit. What does it mean? Nothing.
Yeah.
As the government has announced support measures to help farmers, our Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie, who knows a thing or two about all of this,
got some cows,
says the real problems they face are not so easy to solve.
To those not involved in the industry, a picture-perfect spring day masks the problems that lie behind our multi-billion-pound agri-sector. For the last decade, farming has faced its biggest challenges, and most of those came from the environmental legislation and hidden taxation. When the UK left the EU, many of those government departments stayed close to the workflows and legislation that was set in Europe and changed the single farm payment to a reward scheme rather than subsidy. These policies have caused problems throughout the EU. In Germany alone, over 2,300 farmers have decided to leave the industry. The culling of cattle and wilding of land has saw a substantial drop in productivity as a drive towards lower carbon and methane targets are enforced. Environmental policies around the cleaning of drains has meant that the water tables have stayed high, and in this last year not only land but towns have faced flooding, and the algae is now appearing in our waterways. The sodden ground has meant that slurry storage is now at maximum capacity, and the first cut of silage will be smaller than usual, meaning that winter feed costs will rise even further. In the northeast of England, many of the winter wheat and barley fields have been washed out, and now the expensive reseeding process must begin once more. Rising energy costs have placed pressures on refrigeration, meaning that the storage of products such as potatoes is no longer financially viable. Grants and tax incentives for tree planting schemes has saw many tenant farmers leave an industry where the average working week is 72 hours. If the Prime Minister is to offer real help to farmers, he must look at how his targets will reflect on cash flow and stop rising input costs that have risen to over 35% in the last 2 years. Dougie Beattie, GB News.
Background, Dougie. James Fairley is a potato farmer and he's a host of the Farming Funny podcast, and we're just having a few difficulties connecting to him, but we'll try and do that after we bring you an update with what else is happening news-wise.
A judge has ruled that parts of the government's Rwanda plan should not be applied in Northern Ireland. The High Court in Belfast determined that aspects of the Illegal Migration Act are incompatible with human rights laws and would undermine the Good Friday Agreement. The UK government will have the chance to appeal before another hearing later this month.
MPs have been arrested for serious offences face being barred from Parliament under new plans. This follows a vote in the House of Commons, which the government put forward a motion that recommended MPs only face a ban if they are charged with a violent or sexual offence.
Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has taken the witness stand during the criminal trial of the former president. Cohen has told jurors that he signed off on a hush money payment to the porn star Stormy Daniels to bury her story about an alleged sexual encounter before it could derail his campaign. Trump's pleading not guilty to the charges and has denied any affair with Daniels.
The King's first civilian gallantry list has been revealed today, rewarding acts of bravery. One of those on the list is Georgia Laurie from Sandhurst in Berkshire, who punched a crocodile when it attacked her twin Melissa while they were in Mexico in June 2021. Others on the list include civilians who intervened in knife attacks, civilian arrests and helping strangers.
See, I told you that the British public love wildlife. Absolutely. Lists and lists of people saying what they see in their garden and people absolutely adoring it.
Why don't politicians not realise that people love wildlife?
Well, we'll ask a politician that later. Sue Ryder says, British nature's in crisis. It might as well join in with the rest of the country. Wouldn't want to make it feel left out. Fair point.
Very true. A former senior Royal Navy commander has warned that the new wave of ships and submarines being planned for Britain may be obsolete even before they've entered service.
Well, the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps, will tell the annual First Sea Lords Conference in London today that Britain is entering a golden era of shipbuilding for the Navy.
But Rear Admiral Chris Parry has told GB News that for too long the UK Armed Forces have been transmitting weaknesses to opponents and need to be far quicker in adapting to new technological advances in warfare. Have a look at this.
Like the other branches of the UK's armed services, the Royal Navy's capabilities have been hollowed out by successive governments. With far fewer ships and personnel, and concerns those we have are underarmed and overworked. The pride of the fleet, the two Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers, are impressive. But there are serious concerns we won't now buy enough F-35 stealth combat jets to properly man them. The Defence Secretary will have a far more optimistic message for the first Sea Lords annual conference. With defence spending on the increase and 28 new ships and submarines either under construction or being planned, we are, Grant Shapps will say, entering a golden era of shipbuilding for the Navy. But according to one former senior naval commander, these new vessels could be obsolete before they even enter service, unless defence chiefs and politicians are much more ambitious in adopting technological advances more rapidly than at present.
Technology is basically expanding and accelerating at a tremendous rate right now, and we have to have the systems and the programs in place that can absorb these technologies and insert those technologies into whatever platform we think we need to use to threaten and project force.
The Navy is trialling new unmanned systems for the likes of the carriers and for the subsurface fleet. But compared to our opponents, Chris Parry believes the UK is constantly playing catch-up.
There's this ignorance, complacency, and it will never happen to us, I'm afraid, that prevails at the moment. Democracies plan for peacetime and say they'll adapt for wartime. In the modern world, we're not going to have the time to adapt. We're going to have to go with what we've got. And if you've got everything in the locker in the front line, you're going to deter.
The war in Ukraine and the current conflict in the Middle East has shown just how quickly technologies can advance and adapt. A more resilient Royal Navy, Chris Parry believes, will be one that doesn't just learn to quickly harness such advances, but just as rapidly develops the systems to be able to combat those new weapons. Mark White, GB News.
And we'll be putting some of those points to the Defence Secretary here live on the programme 6:45 this morning. Let's now go back to the potato farmer and the host of Farming Funny podcast, James Fairley. And we were talking about this summit there will be today at Downing Street, James. So the Prime Minister brings the farmers through the doors and pretends to talk to them. Does he listen to them?
No. Like, unfortunately, most people in politics, they don't really listen to the common folk who have the real struggles.
Yeah. What is the basic problem at the minute? I mean, you're facing terrible problems as regards weather, for instance. What would you say is the big problem overall that government can help you with?
Well, I think one of the biggest things is we need transparency in the supply chain for costs. We need a fair price. That's all we're asking, because effectively what we're doing is we're playing with the nation's the cost of living. You know, I'm very surprised that the public haven't made it a bigger thing of the profits that Tesco released a couple of weeks ago of over £2 billion. That's hurting the public, you know, and it's one of the biggest things that it helps our economy, but also saves our economy. So in order to protect the pocket of the British person, I want the government to step in and try and pass the, allow us to be able to earn a bit more, but make it a fair sort of 30-30-30 sort of split through the supply chain.
I mean, it's important that we all wake up to this, and I think what's the Jeremy Clarkson show on Amazon? Clarkson's Farm. I think Caleb's going to be attending this Farm to Fork summit in Downing Street today, and he's become a bit of a champion, hasn't he, for you guys? We're all becoming a bit more aware of all of this, but what are the risks if we don't take this seriously? If farmers can't afford to turn a profit, what's our food security going to be like in this country?
Well, as Jacob Rees-Mogg spoke about the strawberries industry, and this sums up their thinking, we'll just import it. But what happens if we have another incident like what happened with the energy crisis when the war happened? So what we don't realise, because we've never experienced this, is if the food stopped going on the shelves, how long do you think it would be until there was civil anarchy? Not anarchy, sorry, but civil uprising. That is the level of importance of food. And there is becoming a point where people my age, the world's a small place now. We're all got families, that's 6 till 9. At the moment, we're working to try and plant potatoes every day. I've got a young child, and the risks are a lot higher because costs are a lot higher. So you ask yourself, why should we, what's the incentive? What's the drive? And we need to protect that, because if we don't protect that, it's big problems and it affects the whole economy.
James, you must have thought long and hard about whether it's worthwhile continuing doing what you do.
I do what I do because of it's in the family. We've farmed in some of the same land since 1703. So it's not a job. This is what people have to forget about farming. It's not a job, because if it was a job, we would have all given up years ago. This is it's a lifestyle. It's a pride thing for me. I want to hand that on potentially to my next generation. Nothing will make me prouder. But if it was about making money, we would have given up. Obviously, you have to make some money, but the hassles and the stress that we go through to get there, I think that we need a more justified system of doing it. But again, it is a marketplace, so it's, you know, it's the way it is.
Wouldn't it be wonderful if more people could become farmers, if it was something that people did because they could make money doing it? I mean, look at that blue sky behind you. You're up in Dundee in Scotland. You're outside. You're in nature. There's lots of perks to the job, aside from all the stress, which I suppose lots of jobs also carry. I mean, don't you wish that farming didn't have to be such a negative job, I suppose?
Look, don't get me wrong. There's some days I'm sitting on my implements and going up and down the fields, and it's a lovely job, you know, it is. But the hassle of having the big guy up there deciding what you're going to get down here, that's a real difficult one. Your whole season is dependent on the weather. I mean, we had 7 months of rain from basically October to March.
Yeah, I mean, it's impossible.
And you try and stick potatoes in the ground using soil 12 inches deep. It's been a struggle, but we'll get there.
Oh.
Just final point to you, James. One of the headlines in the papers today is about British nature being in crisis. Can you coexist with nature, with the foxes, the hedgehogs, the squirrels, the sparrows, whatever? Are they your friends or are they your enemies?
Yeah, look, I love nature. I think it's got its place. I think people need to get real a little bit. Foxes are detrimental to, you know, they want to kill newborn lambs at any opportunity they get. They're not these cute little things you see running about the street. I think there is a place for it. I think what we're doing is we're allowing too much emphasis on nature. You know, we've got local farmers close to us who have had land washed out. I mean, acres and acres because otters have been building dams, but we can't do anything about it. So there is depending what we want from life. Do we want it to be like that, or do we want? There's things that are lovely, but there's things that need to be addressed in order to leave the countryside run by the people who run the countryside.
Good talking to you, James. Very, very interesting, all of that. James Fairley is a potato farmer. Very good talking to you. Thank you very much indeed. We've got to leave it there.
We're going to talk about the Trick Awards now. We have been nominated for Best Programme here on Breakfast, and we would love your votes. OK, and, well, we love your votes. We need your votes. We have to have your votes. You head to poll-trick.org.uk, or you scan, most importantly, that's symbol there on your screen. You scan that, and then that gets you right to the voting page, and all you really do have to worry about is GB Breakfast there to cast your votes, and we would appreciate that. While you're having to think about that, here's your weather update. Alex Deacon.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The Fret and the Har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
so much doom and gloom, but here's something to cheer you up. Here's how you can get your hands on our biggest cash prize so far. It is a whopping £20,000.
Have a go.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Got the sport right after the break. We'll go to that after this.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Let's get up to date with what's happening sports-wise. Paul here this morning for us. So last night, Goalfest. Liverpool and Villa.
Yeah, it was. So Aston Villa... it's all the race for the Champions League at the moment. So Aston Villa played Liverpool and they went 1-0 down, and then it was at 3-1, and then we got to the point where it was 5 minutes to go and it looked like Liverpool were going to do it because Aston Villa haven't been very good recently. They've won one game in 6. So in this run-up for the top 4, but then Colombian John Duran... Now, see where I'm going with this. John Duran scored a double.
Right. A brace.
That's a Duran, isn't it?
Duran. Oh, yes.
You see? Yeah. I've been working on that, but yeah, it's not that great. But anyway, so he scored twice. Aston Villa had lots of chances, opportunities. Looked like it's one of those games where you think, you know what, it's just not going to happen for them, but then did. So 2 late goals. So that leaves them now 1 point away from Champions League qualification. So all they need is a point in their last game, which is away at Crystal Palace. But the team that's just below them is Tottenham Hotspur. Yeah. Now, this is the very tricky day that Spurs fans have to go through.
So this is Spurs against
Manchester City tonight. Was supposed to be played earlier on in the season, so it was because Man City played in the Cup, so now it's turned out to be the last home game for Spurs. Now, to cut a very long story short with this, Spurs, if they beat Manchester City, could hand Arsenal the title.
So what's your thinking as a Spurs supporter?
I don't know.
Well,
the problem
you
is...
would know. I mean, the thing is that most Spurs supporters hate everything about Arsenal.
True.
Therefore, they do not want them to get the title.
Correct. But there's that chat. If Aston Villa had won last night, there would be no chance of Champions League qualification for Spurs. So Spurs would be thinking, yes, it means nothing. So we'd rather Arsenal did that.
But it could mean about 50 million quid.
Exactly. But then again, it's not fans' money. Ange Postecoglou was asked about this actually yesterday to see what he thought. This is what the manager of Spurs said yesterday.
What atmosphere? You haven't told me. So you think the majority of our fans are going to want us to not win tomorrow night? I don't see it that way. I think the majority of our fans will create the atmosphere they've always created at our home games. And as I said, irrespective, we've got a game of football to win, and that's what we're going to try and do.
A lot of Tottenham Hotspur fans that would quite happily roll over tonight and let Manchester City win to stop Arsenal winning the title, and also would rather be in the Europa League, not be in the Champions League, as long as it stops Arsenal winning the title. And she's not going to do that. There's no way the team is going to do that, but fans would rather that Arsenal didn't win it. So it's a very tricky situation. When the game's there, when you're watching your team play, then obviously you're going to be thinking, I want my team to win. So they may feel a little bit different tonight, but it is a very, very strange situation tonight.
Listen, when you come back at 7:20, we're going to be talking about the Tyson Fury fight at the weekend and World Speed Golf.
Absolutely. Right. And our friend Clive Allen, that played for Manchester City and Spurs, will be with us too.
Oh, excellent stuff. Look forward to that. OK, we'll take a break. Still to come.
Yeah, excellent stuff coming up in the papers. We've got the broadcaster, Nicky Hodgson, and the political commentator, Andy Williams. See you in a mo.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The A74M in South Lanarkshire is partly blocked northbound by an accident at junction 14 at Crawford. In Lincolnshire, Brigg Road is blocked by a fire between Graspy and Clixby. In Newport, the A48 is closed westbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Cauldre to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident. In London, 4th Street is closed off the Edmonton Green roundabout after an accident last night. On the M3 in Surrey, there's a lane closed for emergency repairs on the southbound exit at junction 4 at Camberley. Also in Surrey, the A22 remains closed each way around the Caterham bypass after a fuel spill. Train services in Kent aren't running between Sandwich and Western Hanger, or between Dover Priory and Canterbury East, where overnight engineering works have overrun. And in East Sussex, the A21 is closed each way between Hurst Green and Roberts Bridge after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My
guest and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Can see if we can find
Joining us to go through what's making the news this morning is the author and broadcaster Nicky Hodgson and the political commentator Andy Williams. Thanks for joining us bright and early this Tuesday, the 14th. Andy, let's start with this story about these arrests yesterday. Another day, another story about espionage at the hands of Beijing in this country. When are we going to get tough on this?
No, absolutely. I mean, I think I wouldn't be surprised if this is the absolutely scratching the surface. The scale of espionage in the UK, not just China, but other what you might call rogue states or aggressive states, must be huge. And I think actually one of the really positive steps forward we've made on foreign policy in the UK in the last few years is moving to a more hawkish, aggressive and realistic position on China, because we spent many years sort of cozying up to them, particularly in the sort of Cameron Osborne years 10, 15 years ago. And I think there's now a recognition that that's not going to work. This is an aggressive state, and they don't play by the rules.
You know, you can't just recognise it.
No.
You have to do something about it. And it just seems like we can't even say the word a threat. We have to say an epoch-defining challenge, which is just ridiculous.
And it's so euphemistic, isn't it? It's interesting because, you know, for so long we've had a lot of Chinese students propping up our universities because they come and pay these fees that allow our domestic students to go for, you know, free or cheaper. But I think, I mean, there was the announcement the other week, wasn't there, about we actually have to start looking at the kinds of people we're letting into university and how that escalates. But, I mean, obviously, we don't want to be kind of biased against China in the sense of we don't want to be prejudiced against people that are Chinese in this country. And
well, we've taken in 135,000 or so of them, haven't we, in the last year from Hong Kong? And now suddenly there's this increase in people being suspicious towards anyone who looks Chinese.
Yeah, and that is worrying, and we need to, you know, ensure that doesn't go any further. But you mentioned sort of it going further than warm words. Well, these arrests were made as a result of the National Security Act. It was brought in last year. It's a new piece of legislation that's specifically designed to tackle that threat, the threat posed by hostile states. So clearly there is, you know, we are upping the ante, and I think that's a good thing.
Weight loss jabs, should we talk about those, Nikki?
Yeah, so this is the front page of the Times this morning, and actually in all the papers, but this is about how there are some effects of these weight loss injections that have not been previously expected. So semaglutide, which is the thing that's in Ozempic and Wegovy, obviously helps people lose weight, which reduces heart disease, but apparently it also reduces inflammation in the body. And so professors and doctors are hypothesising that you might actually be able to use it for Alzheimer's and other things that, you know, chronic diseases that start with inflammation. So, you know, it's great, it's fantastic. It's been hailed as, you know, the biggest medical breakthrough since statins in the 90s. The only misgiving I have about this is for people with eating disorders, and I was one as a teenager. You know, I would have done anything to get my hands on this when I was anorexic, and, you know, I was really ill and underweight as it was. And I think, of course, we have this vast number of people that have heart disease and obesity in this country, but we also have more than 1 million children, young people that have eating disorders. And I feel like we just haven't seen those stories come out yet because it hasn't been long enough, but we will get this kind of this cohort of people that are abusing it and are struggling with it.
I totally agree that it's fantastic as a treatment for these heart risk patients and stroke risk patients, but for anyone who actually just wants to lose weight, the idea that actually injecting some toxic thing into your body is a good idea, to me, just seems... Is it because we're just lazy? And it's actually easier just to give yourself a quick injection
it's a quick fix,
than
it
is a quick the gym. And there's this global shortage now of the drug, because everyone wants to get their hands on it, which means there's now a black market for it.
Absolutely.
Which means there's rubbish being sold on the internet.
Absolutely.
Lots of concerns around it.
Yeah, I just feel like we haven't necessarily thought about the negative consequences of it becoming popular as well.
I wonder whether social media's had a part to play here as well. Obviously, issues with body image have massively increased as a result of particularly Instagram. And things, you know, those sorts of issues must be in part driving the search for sort of quick fix solutions like this. Because
definitely.
we were saying beforehand, weren't we, Nikki, it just can't be a sustainable way of
well, and it
tackling
isn't.
the problem.
Doctors say that, you know, after about 60 months it stops working anyway, you plateau. But the point is people don't know how to come off it. I know lots of people that are taking it actually, and they're all in the same situation. How do I stop using it? Because actually you put the weight back on. And I think the other thing is it really messes up social eating and family eating, because how do you know, some people just don't really eat meals anymore.
Or drink.
So
apparently,
alcohol is a massive issue.
Stephen Fry said he came off it because he just increasingly felt sicker and sicker and sicker, and decided it just wasn't worth it.
It wasn't worth it, exactly.
I think Rebel Wilson also lost some whopping 80 kilos, was it, or something?
Really, that much? Wow.
Amount of weight. So, you know, lots of celebs have been on it. I think half of the Kardashians have taken it.
I'm sure.
It's the drug du jour, for sure, isn't it? Where do you want to go next, Eamonn? Should we go... the Labour report into rent caps, Andy, front of The Guardian.
Yeah, so the Labour Party has commissioned a series of reports and research on what might need to be done to tackle the housing crisis, and particularly with rental prices having gone up 9% in the last 12 months, massive spikes over recent years. I think there's actually the headline proposal, which is rent caps, might seem drastic, scary, and maybe not a good idea. And I think a lot of the research says that rent caps are a very blunt instrument and not really going to resolve the genuine problem there is, which is a lack of housing supply driving up prices and making rent unaffordable for lots of people.
Will a rent cap not exacerbate the supply issue? Because a rent freeze has been poo-pooed for that very reason.
Yes.
So what's the difference then between a freeze and a cap?
So I think this is where the detail of the report's really important, because a cap, all of the evidence suggests it doesn't work. It has been trialled elsewhere. I think Berlin is one of the major cities where they've introduced it. But there are some good proposals in here. One is introducing a piece of legislation that says you can only increase rents once a year as a landlord. That seems perfectly reasonable to me. There's no need to be increasing rent several times a year. Another is to give people 4 months' notice before you increase rent, rather than saying next month your rent's going up by £400 a month. That just doesn't work for people. So I think there's a middle ground where we can introduce more regulation to make it fairer for renters.
What do you think, Nikki? Because I've read somewhere that the increase that landlords are allowed to put on is linked to regional wage growth, or
that was
inflation, and whichever is lower.
That was one of the proposals.
Well, that becomes problematic, surely, for some landlords if they're not then able to turn a profit because where they live is different in terms of inflation and their costs aren't keeping up with the local wage. There are loads of problems with this.
It's so complicated and thorny. I mean, I'm just more concerned in general about greedy landlords. I really think that the law is weighted in favour of landlords over renters, and we've seen this problem escalate, over the past decade, and it's really at breaking point. And I think about all the children that are living in temporary accommodation as a result of people not being able to afford, decent rented accommodation, and also just the quality of what people do pay for. It's terrible. It's really, really poor at the minute. So I don't know. I do welcome this report from Labour. Not sure that a cap is the way, but there's got to be something to be done.
Yeah, I think Labour will take this report and they will cherry pick the sensible parts of it and maybe leave on the table some of the more sort of extreme proposals like rent caps. The other thing I'd say is that even landlords, even the National Residential Landlords Association, are saying that the reason for price increases is a chronic shortage of supply. So if we really want to tackle this issue, and it is a massive problem for so many people in Britain, then we need to build more houses. That's
absolutely right.
It's not rent
and we
caps.
say we need to build. The government needs to build and local authorities need to build. There's a complete lack of social housing as well. And they sort of try to ignore this all the time, that it's private landlords and whatever. It's not. There's the local authorities have got to invest in housing, and that's not happening. Can we talk about children's meals, Nikki? There's supposed to be a limit on the amount of salt within meals, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, this is really scandalous. So it's a survey of about 37 restaurants, and it found that 29 of them were kind of providing meals that had a ridiculous amount of salt content for children. So children 4 to 6 are only made to have 3 grams of salt a day, and some of the meals have more than 3 grams in a portion. It is really worrying as a parent. It's really hard not to feed your child salt, actually, because the minute they taste something that is really good, they want it. So you spend a lot of time as a parent battling to make them have kind of plainer foods. So, you go to a restaurant, think it's going to be easy, and then, what they're giving them is just so terrible for them.
Nikki, I'm sorry to cut you short. We have to do so with good reason. We have the Defence Secretary standing by, so thank you to both of you for now. And we say good morning to Grant Shapps, who joins us bright and early this morning. Lovely to see you. Thanks for your time. A security theme, hence why we've got you this morning, I suppose, across all of the stories. And I want to start with foreign interference in these 3 latest, I suppose you could call them spies, but this time from within, acting within Border Force, within the Home Office as well. When are we going to get tough on China?
Morning. Well, look, I can't go into specifics on the individual story because of, obviously, court procedures, but I think it's really important to say that wherever we find foreign interference, we will always act. And we know that foreign countries will use all different manners. It was ever thus, in a sense, with spying, and we'll make sure that we crack down on that. And that's why we've done a whole series of different things. And you'll remember, perhaps just a week ago, I was talking about a data breach in which we can't rule out foreign interference. Anyway, those are the reasons why we'll always crack down on those things, because we have to make sure, living in a democracy as we do, that those type of activities cannot be tolerated.
arrest of 3 people doesn't seem like cracking down on it. A lot of people really think it's time now, not only for the language to toughen, because just calling something a challenge or an epoch-defining challenge rather than a threat is hardly going to be a game changer, but actually proper sanctions, the sort of thing that will actually hurt China, because we're so afraid to do anything that would hurt our economic partnership with them, but we forget they need us too.
Look, I agree, and actually good international sort of cooperation and/or sanctions or other measures, in different parts of the world is something that we do all the time. You've seen what we've done with Russia. Our relationship with China in particular is a complex one, obviously, because there's enormous amounts of trade and a lot of areas where we do have to cooperate, but just because there's simply no other way to get stuff done. For example, on things like climate and elsewhere. But I'd be very, very clear, and you've talked about tough language here, we will not hesitate to call out wrongdoings when we see it. And that means and includes, for example, recently where we did see China involved with, for example, we believe trying to take people's electoral register information. So we'll always crack down where we need to. So I can't comment on the specific cases in terms of other than the facts that there have been some arrests, but I would suggest that those arrests in themselves show that we will not tolerate this.
Secretary of State, you're speaking at the annual CPAR conference in London today. Are they going to like what you have to say?
Well, look, as I've been saying since I was in this role, and indeed at a major speech in January at Lancaster House, which happens to be the same location as that Sea Power conference you mentioned, we are living in more dangerous times. Clearly, we've got a war in Europe with Ukraine being illegally invaded. We've got conflict in the Middle East, and we've got the rise of China, who really do present a big, and we've described it as epoch-defining change to the world. And Britain and the United Kingdom and our allies must be ready for that, which is why last month we announced 2.5% of our gross domestic product will be spent on defence. So we're going to raise the amount of money we're spending by £75 billion. That's enabled me today to make this speech at the Sea Power conference, in which I will be talking about our shipbuilding, our warfighting ability, with a major new announcement of new ships for our Royal Marines. And we wouldn't be able to do that if we weren't putting the money in, which we are doing. And I suspect that countries like China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, they'll all be taking notice of this.
And many of these ships will be destined for the Indo-Pacific region. But keeping up with the security theme with you this morning, you only have to look at our own borders here, and we aren't keeping those secure. And we're talking this morning about the latest hiccup for the government in Northern Ireland. Is Northern Ireland about to become the asylum capital of the UK, where people can't be deported to Rwanda and can pass easily through to Ireland as well with the protection of the European Union? You can't wriggle out of this now because of the Good Friday Agreement.
Well, first of all, we're absolutely going to appeal that ruling. We don't accept that's the right way forward. We do think that Parliament has been very, very clear, and that this government in particular has said that we want to stop the boats. I'm afraid, whatever you think about this, we think that's the only way to break this illegal trade. I'm afraid the Labour Party want to stop the planes. We want to stop the boats. So we don't accept this ruling. We absolutely are going to appeal it. We will do everything that's required to make sure, as you described it, the Northern Ireland can't be in this position, because we believe firmly in being able to control our own borders, and we've been prepared to take action to get to that. I have to say, tooth and nail resistance all the way from Keir Starmer, who has no plan to deal with this at all, whereas we are at least making sure that we're passing this legislation, and we won't let Northern Ireland be an exemption to the rule in the United Kingdom.
And finally, remaining on the security theme, I know that Downing Street's hosting a Farm to Fork summit today, and we've been speaking to farmers on the programme, and we will be later on as well, about a genuine threat to food security in this country that we aren't taking seriously, that they aren't getting a decent wage for their work, that the supermarkets are profiteering and nothing is being done. What will Rishi Sunak and indeed Number 10 be saying to those farmers today to reassure them, and indeed us, the public, who would face the problems if we do have some sort of food security crisis?
Yeah, well, look, first of all, I think it's probably important to recognise and thank our farmers. We actually have proportionately, compared with, say, for example, Germany, cheaper food in this country in our supermarkets of high quality, and that's in no small part because of the British farmer. So this morning we're going to be both discussing this at Cabinet, and then there's this Farm to Fork Summit as well at Number 10. It's the second one as far as I recall. So it is something this government's been very, very serious about highlighting, particularly, as you say, in a less certain world, to bring back to the security theme, the importance of being able to produce produce at home. So, look, no one's going to have all the answers instantaneously. It also depends, farming, on lots of things, including the weather, which can be unexpected. But they do have a government that absolutely backs the industry, and that's why we'll be pleased to be having farmers at in Downing Street later today.
Well, we'll wait what they have to say. Thank you.
Hope it goes well for you, Secretary of State. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you. We say goodbye to our newspaper reviewers. They'll be back in about 40 minutes' time. And right now we'll bring you a weather update. Alex Deacon is the man for that.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing okay for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, bit of sunshine on the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The Fret and the Har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News. The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding in North Ayrshire. The A78 is closed northbound from the A759 junction at Ockengate, where overnight roadworks have overrun. In Lincolnshire, the A1084 is blocked where they're dealing with a fire between Grasby and Clixby. In Newport, the A48 is closed westbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Caldra to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon. In London, 4 Street is closed off the Edmonton Green roundabout after an accident last night. In Surrey, the A22 remains closed each way on the Caterham bypass after a fuel spill over the weekend. Train services in Kent are suspended between Dover Priory and Canterbury East, between Sandwich and Western Hanger. Overnight engineering works have overrun, and in East Sussex, the A21 is closed between Hurst Green and Roberts Bridge after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Good morning. It's fast approaching 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of May. You are very welcome.
Yeah, welcome aboard. Breakfast with Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster. Headlines are these. A groundbreaking new obesity drug could revolutionise healthcare as it helps weight loss and reduce the risk of heart attacks.
A furious reaction from China after their spies are arrested and accused of infiltrating Britain's border force.
Could Northern Ireland now become the new asylum capital of the UK after the High Court in Belfast rejected the Rwanda deportation plan?
Yesterday, the Prime Minister made a big speech on security, but today we learned that 3 people working within Border Force and Immigration have been charged with spying for China, and his Rwanda plan has come unstuck in Northern Ireland. I'll bring you the details shortly.
The Prime Minister is set to welcome farmers to Downing Street today as he announces new support for agriculture.
Should we prioritise mental health over policy from government? A charity has suggested all Whitehall decisions should undergo mental health tests before coming into force. Let's work out what that's all about shortly.
And in the sport this morning, late comeback from Aston Villa gives them a 3-3 draw with Liverpool, puts them 1 point away from qualifying for the Champions League. A win for Spurs tonight against Manchester City could hand rivals Arsenal the title, but still leave them within a chance of Champions League. Oh, the dilemma. And the run-up to Tyson Fury's undisputed World Heavyweight Championship fight with Alexander Usyk. It's Tyson's dad who's stealing all the headlines.
Dull, damp day for many today, but it will be brighter for parts of Wales and southwest England compared to yesterday, and northern Scotland may well be the warm spot. Join me later for a full forecast.
Now, it feels like every day there is a report into Ozempic. This is the groundbreaking weight loss drug, but there's been a new benefit discovered in all of this, that it can actually reduce the risk of heart and strokes by a fifth.
Cardiologists have said that these weight loss jabs are the most significant development in heart disease since 1990 and are a game changer for heart patients. Now, GP and Chair for Coventry Local Medical Committee, that's Dr. Gavin Shields, with his view. Now, Dr. Shields, what do you make of what you're hearing about Ozempic?
Oh, good morning. Thank you for having me on. Well, it sounds exciting. I mean, obviously, we know that obesity and cardiovascular disease is a major impact on our patients' lives and a major cost to the health economy. So any reduction and protection for our patients, absolutely welcome. There are a number of considerations. Obviously, looking at the study which has just been out in the press today, it looks like about 1.5 patients per 100 per year would have a reduction in cardiovascular events. That's really worth having. But there do need to be balances made with the drug, both in terms of potential side effects that it might have, particularly gastric side effects, and also the other big issue.
Some of the side effects are? What are the gastric side effects?
To explain the drug, it works by mimicking chemicals in the body that increase our insulin production and slow down the emptying of the stomach. So some of the main side effects patients might get is gastric side effects with bloating and even potentially blockage of the gut and inflammation of the pancreas gland. So that always needs to be balanced with any patients taking the medication, which is why the medication really would be a specialist-only medication with careful consideration of the patients, balancing their potential benefits and potential risks. The other big issue with the medication I would like to highlight is the availability of it. I mean, we've used it for a while with our diabetic patients, but this has been a newer indication using it for weight loss. And potentially, if the cardiovascular colleagues, if the cardiologists would be using it, that would mean...
What is it used for? I mean, one would have thought there's diabetic patients queuing up for this increase in insulin that the drug can provide and think, right, this is what it's all about. No, these diabetic sufferers can't get hold of it because it's all going on weight loss.
That is a potential problem. I've found it quite restrictive for my diabetic patients getting hold of it. And they are a particularly high-risk group of complications, particularly cardiovascular complications. Our local weight management in Coventry, Warwickshire, our specialist weight management clinic, who would be initiating this, currently still have the advice not to be referring patients in because they can't get hold of it to initiate patients on it for weight management. So that is a problem. I would also like to really advise patients not to source it from other sources on the internet. I have read about situations where patients have managed to get hold of the medication, but it has been contaminated and caused potentially very serious side effects.
Yeah. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it? When you think of these breakthroughs, they always come with these sort of side effects, don't they? And you've got 7 million people in this country living with some sort of heart disease, and this is great news for them. As you say, the diabetics want it, and people with genuine weight loss problems that are struggling to lose weight and has all sorts of health implications for that. But then you have a huge crisis amongst youngsters, mental health issues, eating disorders. I think 1 million of those in this country, desperate to get their hands on it at any price. And as you say, getting their hands on perhaps who knows what off the internet. And I've also been reading about the impacts on fertility, that a lot of people who lose weight suddenly find they become more fertile, and they've been called these Ozempic babies, is increasing people falling pregnant. And GPs like yourself warning that there have been tests in animals that have shown that there have been fetal abnormalities for Ozempic consumed animals. So there's huge risks on that front as well.
There are risks. I mean, not to detract from any encouraging news that can help our patients, both in terms of lose weight, reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease and diabetes, and even if not diabetic, patients who are more tending to overweight and obesity will be potential diabetics of the future. So preventing diabetes is important, and for our, saving money for the health economy. But as with any study, I would always like to take it with a degree of caution. A new study doesn't necessarily translate into immediate treatment, and I certainly wouldn't want people to feel that they should be contacting their doctors, their surgeries, and expecting prompt referral into weight management services, because we need more work on this area. It is encouraging, but there is a real problem with the availability of the medication. And we're going to have to take some tough decisions about who we use it best in if we have limited availability of it.
That is the dilemma, isn't it? If it works well on both these fronts, who do you prioritise it for? Doctor, thank you very much indeed. Very interesting to hear from you and what you've had to say on this. That's Dr. Gavin Shields. He's GP and Chair of Coventry Local Medical Committee, speaking to us live there from Warwickshire.
Some breaking news to bring you, and a shame we get this just after we've spoken to the government, but we hear in the last few minutes from the Office for National Statistics that the rate of UK unemployment has risen again to 4.3% in the 3 months to March, from 4.2% in the previous 3 months.
You always go on about these 0.0%.
No, but it's the direction of travel, Eamonn. I mean, you might be able to get the government off the hook. We're seeing increasing numbers of people who are economically inactive in this country. OK, it's immaterial. You decide.
Immaterial.
OK.
Right, so China has reacted furiously after 3 men were charged yesterday over spying for Hong Kong. Now, this comes as a Home Office immigration official was amongst one of the 3 charged under the National Security Act on suspicion of spying.
Well, the officials were accused of carrying out hostile reconnaissance on behalf of the Hong Kong Intelligence Service. Let's get the thoughts this morning of Catherine Forster. Catherine, we spoke to the Defence Secretary Grant Shapps about this yesterday, who highlighted the problem, really, of, you know, on one hand, talking tough against China, but really we're so in hock to them economically that that's about as far as it goes.
Yes, that's completely right. We are so economically entangled with them that for all of the tough talk that we may issue, our actions are rather weaker. Of course, you know, many people would say there is a genocide going on and has been for years with the Uyghur Muslims, and the West, to a very, very large extent, has turned a blind eye. So here we go again with more people charged with spying for China. It's only a couple of weeks since we had people working in the heart of Westminster charged with spying for China, and now we have 3 men, one of whom was working at Heathrow Airport in the Border Force and another working for the Home Office in immigration, charged with spying for China, charged with actually breaking into a Hong Kong dissident's house, trying to break in on the 1st of May. So really very serious charges. Now, China, unsurprisingly, have hit back and said we strongly condemn the UK's unwarranted accusation. And the Home Office have ordered a review of recruitment and vetting procedures. But, you know, it seems like week after week, we keep hearing these stories of people being charged with spying or China allegedly hacking into our systems. But the government, you know, they've said China are a systemic challenge. They won't call it a threat. And of course, those are just words. Many people within the Conservative Party, people like Sir Ian Duncan Smith, among others, saying that we really have been asleep at the wheel as far as China is concerned. It's time to get much tougher. But of course, saying that and doing that are 2 very different things when you consider our economic commitments and, to some extent, dependency on them.
Catherine, thank you very much indeed. 7:10 is the time. Some other stories coming into the newsroom. A judge has ruled parts of the government's Rwanda plan should not be applied in Northern Ireland. The High Court in Belfast determined aspects of the Illegal Migration Act are incompatible with human rights and would breach the Good Friday Agreement. The UK government will have the chance to appeal.
The Chief Inspector of Prisons has raised concerns that dangerous criminals are being freed from prison too early to cut overcrowding. He's highlighted that the early release scheme announced by the government last year is causing high-risk offenders to be let out, some of whom are a risk to children.
Donald Trump's former lawyer, Michael Cohen, has taken the witness stand during his criminal trial. Cohen has told jurors the former president personally signed off on a hush money payment to porn star Stormy Daniels to bury her story about an alleged sexual encounter. Trump has pleaded not guilty to the charges and denied an affair with Miss Daniels.
And the King's first civilian gallantry list has been revealed today, rewarding acts of bravery. And one of those on the list is Georgia Laurie from Sandhurst in Berkshire, who punched a crocodile in the face whilst it was attacking her twin Melissa. They were on holiday in Mexico at the time in 2021. Others on the list include civilians who intervened in knife attacks, civilian arrests and helping strangers. What a worthy cause.
Just a word to say that, as some of you may know, we have been nominated for a Trick Award, a Television, Radio and Industry Club Best News Programme category and Best News Presenter.
And here's how you could vote if you so wish to do so. You can use the QR sort of code on your screen, take a photograph of it and wait for the yellow sign to flash up. Or you just log on to poll-trick.org.uk. All the details are on our website, gbnews.com, as well.
Very important for us that we get that vote from you. So if you can't take the time, take the trouble, we would really appreciate it. If nothing else, it gives us an afternoon out. Whether we'd want to go out today or not, depending on the weather, Alex Deacon will tell you.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The fret and the har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
To the time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to enjoy a spectacular summer with an extra £20,000 cash in your bank.
Yes, it is our biggest cash prize of the year so far. Here's how it could be yours.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Right, now next on the programme, we debate whether government policies should undergo mental health checks before coming into force, in case they damage you too much when the government says this must happen. More of that nonsense right after this.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do.
His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, and unlike you.
That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice.
Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Nana Akua. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Right, we're talking about mental health now. Huge problem. You've just talked about how there's a rise in unemployment at the moment. Could this all be linked? Well, the Centre for Mental Health Charities urged the government to check the mental health impacts of all new policies before they're put in place.
Now, this comes as the government prepares to crack down on welfare reform proposals. Joining us now, political consultant and strategist Peter Barnes thinks policy should come first, and
psychotherapist Camelin Kaur, who thinks mental health should come first. Well, let's start with you, Peter. What do you make of all of this from this charity? I mean, clearly, there is a huge issue with mental health in this country.
Oh, yeah, definitely. No one's denied that mental health is a huge policy area and that it's an issue that affects millions of families up and down the country. No, and I think that just goes without saying. But the fundamental reality is what is being proposed here is massively unworkable. That's my main concern. Government policy is slow to react as it is. You know, we have an absolute massive employment and productivity problem in this country. As we've seen today, unemployment has risen. It's still at a relatively low figure, historically at 4.3%. But we actually have over 11 million people in this country that are economically inactive. And the government is right to want to crack down on this. It is right to want to move forward. And adding an extra burden, an extra hoop, that realistically will consistently move, it's just will only add problem after problem after problem. We have to get a hold of this problem. We have let the productivity issue of our economy kind of go on and on and on. We've kicked the can down the road so long now, it's about as long as the M25, and we have to fix it. And unfortunately, I think that whilst the intentions behind this move are right, the practicality of implementing it are just all wrong.
And your worries, Camelin, are what?
My worries are that any policy that we introduce is going to have an impact on our mental health, either in a good way or a bad way, because as human beings, we react to things. It's really natural for us to react to things. And then our reactions is then what shows up in society, whether it's in a work setting, whether that's in our communities, whether that's in our families. So although it might not be practical at this point in time, I definitely think it's worth exploring because the benefits of it might outweigh all the practicalities or the impracticalities of implementing this policy.
But Camelin, how in practical terms do you implement this? Because if you were to say, right, we're going to try and get more people back to work, it's good for their mental health, well, actually, but it might also be detrimental to some because it increases anxiety. For others, working is the medicine. You know, it's such a nebulous term, isn't it, mental health? What works for one person doesn't work for another person. So how on earth can you put that above, you know, the other sort of reasons behind the policy, like the economic benefits?
Yeah, but if you think about it right now, Isabel, there's loads of people that are actually off sick work. Like, they're not working. They've actually not been in a mental capacity to be able to take on work. And this might be because they're being put into situations where they're not mentally capable of actually dealing with that situation, or emotionally at a place where they can deal with it. So even though we think economically at this point in time it might not work, if you think about what it's actually costing the country not to do mental health assessments or not to assess the mental health impact of certain policies, then I think we really need to take that into consideration. And I get it. I understand it might not feel practical at this point in time, but we've not tried it. We've not tried it to be able to write it off or to be able to say that it's not practical. So these are things that with any policy that we start off with, it doesn't always seem practical, but when we start working through it, we find a way to make it practical or to make it work. And not every single government policy has to have a mental health impact assessment. It could be certain ones, or there could be certain ones that are prioritised at this point in time. But I definitely stand by my point that everything that is introduced by the government is going to have a mental health impact, whether you like it or not. We just need to make sure it has a good impact as opposed to a negative impact.
Well, Camelin, instead of maybe assessing the policies, why don't we just assess the people, whether they are capable of work or having some sort of extra load put upon them. The people are obviously not up to requirement in terms of a job like that.
Yeah, I understand that point, but also it's like, say for example, there's an organisation that's not functioning well. You can go and speak to every single employee in that organisation, but until things start changing from the management level or from the top tier or from senior level management, it doesn't make a difference, because everything has a ripple effect, and the ripple effect always starts from the top and then it ripples all the way down. And it'll be the same when it comes to government policy as well. We can go and talk to every single person and ask them about their mental health, ask them about their past experiences, ask them about their trauma, but if there's not an infrastructure put into place to support their answers, then it's a pointless exercise.
Peter, whilst Camelin makes a very reasonable argument there, I can hear people up and down the country screaming at their radios, screaming at their TVs, really frustrated, going, for goodness sake, we're a soft-touch nation. People need to toughen up. We can't be putting mental health top of the agenda ahead of everything else. What would you say to them?
I think we have to take a balanced approach to this. I do think there is an element that we are a little bit of a soft touch. I think it's undeniable. There are many studies now that show there is an overdiagnosis of things such as anxiety, PTSD, bipolar disorder and personality behaviour disorder as well. So, you know, we do have to have a real conversation about what's being diagnosed and what isn't. And also, but then when we do actually look at this stuff, I don't necessarily disagree that, you know, this is not a bad idea, but we mentioned earlier that, you know, it doesn't have to be every government policy. Well, which ones? This is the problem. The thing that has been proposed is very nice and fluffy and, oh, isn't it all lovely? But unfortunately, we're about to probably see, and I agree with the Prime Minister who said this yesterday, more change in the next 5 years than we probably have over the last 100 years. We are about to go into a new kind of workforce. We're about to go into a new kind of systems, and everything is going to change. And that is going to need quick and a very sturdy and firm way of handling the country. The economy is in very tense situation right now. So to add burden after burden after burden, it doesn't make any sense.
Okay.
Well, if you think mental health is bad now, wait till we have a real recession. Then you'll see a mental health crisis in this country.
Okay.
Guys, thank you both very much indeed. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Camelin, call Peter Barnes. Appreciate it.
26 minutes past 7. With that, we'll take a break. Paul Coit with sport and special guest footballer Clive Allen live right after this.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M1 in West Yorkshire, the inside lane's closed northbound where a lorry's broken down between junctions 39 and 40 near Wakefield, causing delays. In Lincolnshire, the A1084 is blocked after a fire between Graspy and Clixby. In Newport, the A48 is closed westbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Coldra to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, there are southbound queues because of roadworks between junctions 26 and 24 near Nottingham. There are also delays because of roadworks on the M1 in Bedfordshire, southbound just before junction 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn, taking nearly half an hour from junction 12, the Toddington and Flitwick turn. In London, 4th Street in Edmonton is closed southbound because of an accident. In Surrey, the A22 remains closed at Caterham after a fuel spill. In East Sussex, the A21 is closed each way between Hurst Green and Roberts Bridge after an accident. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel. Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking...
This is a nightmare for the Conservatives again.
Down to earth.
It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it?
And most importantly, honest.
Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them.
Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
You know, it's amazing to see who turns up watching football last night at Villa Park, Villa against Liverpool. Who was the esteemed supporter, the celeb supporter?
Tom Hanks.
Tom Hanks?
Tom Hanks. They've got the future king and they've got Tom Hanks.
Well, what's that all about?
You know what? I remember... It's bizarre when you see actors that are into football, they find out why. I think it was the first game. I think it was the first game he came to. I think he was invited to go along to a Premier League game. And then first in, then obviously they're the ones. And then they capture your heart or whatever. And so he's...
And Will Ferrell buying into Leeds?
I know, that's it. But you've got Lovejoy, Ian McShane. That's the big one, isn't it? That's the one everybody wants, is Lovejoy. So we've got... At Spurs, Jude Law, Kenneth Branagh. He's also a big Spurs fan as well. So, you know, there's quite a few scattered around. Yeah. So, but nothing tops Lovejoy, though, for me.
So, why was the Villa-Liverpool game significant last night?
Well, it was very significant. Well, Liverpool are fine, so they're going to be in third place in the Premier League. That's done and dusted. And, of course, Jurgen Klopp, last couple of games, that would be the last away game, and the last home game is going to be at the weekend. Now, for Aston Villa, they are very close to qualifying for the Champions League. So the top 4 places will be Champions League. Aston Villa are now just 1 point away. If they'd beaten Liverpool, then they would qualify for the Champions League. They were 3-1 down, went right down to the wire. 88th minute, they scored 2 goals, so 3-3. So now we look over to Spurs.
Right.
Now, Spurs, it's almost like Spurs are going to be the kingmakers here because Spurs are playing Manchester City tonight. Manchester City are just behind Arsenal at the moment. So Man City have played 36 games on 85 points. Arsenal have played 37 also, on 86. So there's 1 game for Arsenal, 2 left to Man City. If Manchester City are beaten by Tottenham, that will help Tottenham's chances to get into the Champions League, although slight. But more importantly is that it pretty much hands the deadly rivals, Arsenal, the the title.
Right,
So
and that is a big problem. We've got to just sort of point out how deadly that could be for some Spurs supporters.
Well, I think many. We've got Ange Postecoglou. He was asked about this, and whether Ange truly understands the rivalry between fans. It's like that Schadenfreude thing. You'd rather the other lot did worse than actually you did better, if you know what I mean. So do you actually think, oh, do we get in the Champions League, or what do we do, or do we hand it to Arsenal, which would just be the ultimate nightmare for any Spurs fan? But this is what Ange Postecoglou had to say about the situation.
A proportion of your fans won't want you to win this game. How do you feel about that and the potential atmosphere it might create?
A proportion of our fans. What does that mean?
Difficult to say.
What proportion?
Difficult to say how many.
Really? What, 50%? 20%? 1%? Just give me a rough estimate in your mind.
I don't know.
You don't know? Okay.
We'll find out.
So let's answer a question we don't know the answer to. Yeah, that's fine. People are allowed to feel the way they do, but...
See, Ange doesn't get it. He just doesn't get it. There are Spurs supporters who absolutely hate everything about Arsenal.
And vice versa.
Yeah, and vice versa. And he's got to understand that thing. And I understand that, you know, footballers, managers do what they do. They manage, they play, they whatever. But this is bigger than the game, almost.
It really is almost bigger. And the thing is, the manager is going to want to win, absolutely 100%, absolutely. So he should, so are the players. Well, look, someone who actually played for Spurs and Manchester City and even signed for Arsenal for a little while, our great friend Clive Allen we've got.
And lived to tell the tale.
Lived to tell the tale. Morning, Clive.
Good morning, Clive.
Gents. Good morning.
Hi.
Good morning, Eamonn.
Well, what do you make of this tonight?
It's going to be a cracker, absolutely. Obviously, a game of great magnitude for both clubs. There's no doubt about that. We have this amazing Premier League record against them, Eamonn, and they haven't scored in the Premier League at the new stadium. Yes, they did in the FA Cup, but it's a game for Spurs to win tonight. There's no doubt about that. No doubt about that for me either.
Spurs to win?
Yes, absolutely.
Have you ever been in an atmosphere, though, Clive, in a stadium like this? A lot of people are talking about it. Obviously, I think probably there's going to be a situation where Spurs fans beforehand are saying, you know what, I think we'd rather lose. But when they get there, and when you're there in the atmosphere and you're playing Manchester City, who are the champions, it's a game you want to win, and you forget everything else. How do you think do you think it'll be a strange feeling?
As a professional, no. I think going into any game, you've got to win the game, and you want to win the game. Obviously, what actually happens and what the consequences are, I don't think you're actually thinking about that at the time. You want to perform well. You want to get a result against, probably from Spurs' point of view, the best club side in the world at the moment, which is Manchester City. So you'll be focused on the job in hand. You need to get the result, and obviously, there is still a mathematic possibility of finishing fourth in Champions League football for us. So we have to strive for that.
But even if that handed Arsenal the title?
Unfortunately, yes, Eamonn. Unfortunately, yes. Calm down.
I would have a problem with
the dilemma. Well, funnily enough, the last time it actually happened was '99, when Spurs went up to Old Trafford to play Manchester United, and it was a situation of beat Manchester United, which was never going to happen at Old Trafford, by the way, and then hand Arsenal the title, and Spurs went 1-up. I don't know if you remember that, Clive, with Les Ferdinand scoring. And then United came back. So it's just how the atmosphere is going to be. It's a very strange situation for anyone to be in. What about as a fan, though? There's no doubt that you're just going to think, we just need to win the game, because it's just something that's nothing really to do with anybody else. You just need to concentrate on your own thing, right?
Absolutely. And the other thing is as well, it's not cut and dried tonight. It won't be all over. Even if we were to beat City or we draw with City tonight, Arsenal still have that last game against Everton at home. No easy task. Sean Dyche is not going to bring Everton and let Everton lose against the potential champions. He's had a incredible season. So again, you look at all the scenarios, and Manchester City at home to West Ham. West Ham are not going to allow City an easy passage. No. We saw it years ago with the closest finish ever with Queen's Park Rangers, who had absolutely no hope at Manchester City on the last day of the season, and it went to the very last second. It's going to be close. It's going to go right to the wire, I'm sure.
Early days, but makes me a little nervous.
Sean Dyche, it was interesting, Clive, you mentioning Sean Dyche there. I often look at Sean Dyche and I think he should be at another club. He should be at somebody higher up the league. I've got a club in mind.
Oh, yeah, you know what? There might be a vacancy round your way soon.
Who might that be, Eamonn?
Well, he wouldn't have to move too far, really. But I always thought, and this may sound stupid, but I always thought he was a good fit for Man United.
I've got to say, obviously, I know Sean very well. He's done an absolutely incredible job at Burnley. He's taken that into his role at Everton. I think you talk about the perfect fit in terms of the turmoil that Everton Football Club have been in, and the way that Sean Dyche has handled himself, the way that he's got the club into a position of safety is quite magnificent. It really is.
Yeah.
And he I think, like you, I'm sure you feel he could handle Manchester United, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, club job in the world. And Sean Dyche is more than capable of handling that, that's for sure.
More than capable, that's quite interesting. How does Ange Postecoglou take on City tonight? How do you beat Man City?
We have to play the way that he wants us to play. He believes in the system and the way that the players need to perform. If we perform to the best of our ability, I think we're capable. There's no doubt about that. It's not going to be an easy task. That Manchester City juggernaut is rolling at the moment. Obviously, the form that they come into this game, the way they've been playing, results they've achieved, it's not going to be easy. But I'll reiterate again, they haven't scored a goal at the new stadium, at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium in the Premier League.
Yeah.
And if that continues, Eamonn, that's very unlikely with our defensive record at the moment. But if that continues, if we deny Manchester City a goal, then it could be a big result for us tonight.
Big result. And I think we should have a word about Captain Black just before we go.
About Mikel Arteta, yeah, you think so? Captain Black, yeah.
We call him Captain Black from Captain Scarlet. He just looks like Captain Black, so he does.
You've seen the circles every time he walks around.
but he is the boy, isn't he? He has come good.
Absolutely, Eamonn. I think that I've got to say, seeing Arsenal recently against us, and the way they performed, they've well improved, magnificent improvement from last season.
No question.
I think they have a bigger belief in what they're doing. They believe in the manager. I think the club has shown the belief in the manager, and it's all coming to fruition at the moment.
Goodness me.
But not this weekend.
Not this weekend. Not this weekend. He doesn't believe.
You know, the weirdest thing, though, is that you've got Arsenal fans that are supporting Spurs tonight, and that is a very, very strange thing to see. It really is.
Yeah,
and it's making me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm not really sure.
But good one. Clive, lovely talking to you, mate. Thank you very much. I think either side could do with a Clive Allen tonight. I think they'll be all agreed on that. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
What a player.
Thank you, my friend. See you again in 40 minutes' time or so. Still to come, we'll be going through what's making the news with Nicky Hodgson and Andy Williams, not the singer, the political commentator, right after this.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Weekdays from midday.
Well, Welsh farmer Gareth Wyn-Jones is a first-language Welsh speaker and joins us now. Gareth, I mean, a lot of people will be thinking, hang on, this guy is a Welsh teacher. He speaks English. He knew what was on the parking ticket. He's just trying to make a point. He's being a prat, isn't he?
No, hey, come on, mate. I'm a first language Welsh. It's important that we watch after our language and, you know, that everything's bilingual. For us in Wales, you wouldn't go to France and expect your ticket to be in English, would you? You know, English is the most spoken language, but let's watch after these small languages. It's part of our cultural So, you know, I take my hat off to the guy. Fair play to him to go out and to fight this. But what it's done is put it onto the mainstream media, and you're talking about it, even that you're calling them of that. You know, at least we're having a discussion about it, and it's putting the Welsh language in the forefront. And,
So,
you know,
Gareth,
Sarah Cymraeg speaking Welsh is important.
Yeah, so Gareth, this is a matter of principle. Is there a sense that the Welsh language is being eradicated in Wales? Is this something that the Welsh people need to rise up against?
Well, Welsh Government are trying to, you know, bring a lot more Welsh speaking into our daily life and teach people how to speak Welsh. Well, everything should be bilingual then. And I think, you know, it should start with government. So government should be putting pressure on these companies to make sure everything is bilingual. So I get behind this guy. Fair play to him. It's a good stance, and it puts it in the public eye. Let's have everything in both languages, especially Welsh, because that's my first language. And I'm
you know what? If I was Welsh, if I were Welsh, I think I would agree with you. I think I would agree with you, Gareth.
It depends if you come from Wrexham.
GB News is Britain's election channel.
And when the big stories break, we're tackling them on Britain's newsroom. When we disagree, and we disagree a lot, it's even livelier than normal.
We don't disagree that much.
We do. His comedy, though, is revolting. I knew her, unlike you. That explains Beverly Turner's temperament.
It's a bit frosty in here, isn't it?
He'll have one of me one day.
For dartball practice. Britain's newsroom on GB News. Weekdays, 9:30 a.m.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are talking about what's making the news this morning in the papers and online with the broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and the political commentator Andy Williams. Welcome back to both of you. And Andy, we're going to delve straight into our GB News favourite, Esther McVey, our common sense minister. And she's been planning a crackdown on civil service diversity initiatives. This all started with the column she wrote on Sunday, and there's a piece in The Guardian Online on it as well. What are they saying, Andy?
Yeah, that's right. So Esther McVey gave a speech yesterday where she was talking about cracking down on what she describes as inappropriate backdoor politicisation of the civil service. She says that, in particular, there is a culture of civil servants across all government departments being too interested in putting forward their political views, and she particularly mentioned, this got a lot of pickup on social media, people wearing lanyards that express political views or views about certain issues. I mean, I just think this is a classic example of a government that's run out of ideas. If you're really prioritising saying people shouldn't be wearing lanyards anymore.
It's culture wars, though, isn't it? And that annoys people and might maybe make them go to vote Tory.
I think it might do. I think it's the government playing the culture wars and doing it in a way that will not resonate with people. There may be a handful of people who think, good on them, the lefty civil service. I just think it's nonsense.
Well, there must be a reason they're doing it.
Well, there is, but I feel also it's confected. It's to create this imaginary divide, a bigger gulf between the left and the right when the policies are not particularly discernibly different. So actually, if you go after this stuff, which sounds like common sense, you think it's an easy win, but it's just offensive. I find the LGBT stuff particularly annoying as someone who's bisexual, because it's like so many people around the world have the most appalling rights being LGBT. People come to this country to seek, refuge because they're under threat of death in other places, and it's like, it's not a bad thing that people feel okay to express their sexuality anymore. We should celebrate that as proof of being civilised, not the opposite.
Why can't the ambulance service just be the ambulance service, the police service just be the police service? Why can't they, when they go to work, just hang their allegiances on the door?
Well, I'd say, Eamonn, because traditionally lots of environments would be very hostile towards LGBT people, and there's, I still hear trans jokes in the workplace and all that kind of stuff. Like, you do hear that still. So at least if someone is, if someone is a bit visible, then maybe it will make people think twice about what they say, whether it's offensive or not. It's that.
Yeah.
It's feeling pushed out of the culture of joking.
The reason we've seen social progress in this country and in other countries around the Western world is because it's become more acceptable to have these conversations out in the open.
Yeah.
And I think that has driven progress in every respect, whether it's gender diversity, whether it's sexuality, race.
We'll agree.
I think there is huge progress. I mean, Nikki sits and just drops in every now and again that she's bisexual.
Well, just make it it's relevant to the discussion.
But it is relevant, and I love you for it, and I want to hug you for it, and I don't see anything different about it. I think it's a a great thing, but it's awful that we would be thinking that we could be in company, that would be an issue.
But there are places where it still is, and you'd be teased, or you'd have... I've worked in offices where, lots of men, put bets on who can get near me soonest because I'm bisexual and all the rest of it, and it's just like... that's not the point of it. The point of it is the fact that so many people, think about until the 1960s, it was actually illegal
I'm a police
to be gay.
officer, do I need to be wearing some sort of lanyard that says to me, hey, I'm on your side?
Think about the fact that if there's somebody who is vulnerable and LGBT and you are wearing a lanyard, they might feel more comfortable to come to you for help.
But should it not be more thing that
the
police or whatever service it is should be on everybody's side, and that should be assumed right from the start?
But they haven't historically. There's so many examples of abuses of that, so that's the issue.
Well, I love you.
Thanks. I love you too.
Right, well, let's get more, Nikki, because you want to talk about a trigger warning. This has come from Dame Judi Dench about sensitive theatre goers.
This is another lot of crud.
What's she saying?
This is a lot of rubbish. I completely agree on this. So Dame Judi Dench, the doyen of theatre that she is, has just said, I've had enough of it. If you don't like it, don't come. It's that simple. And I do sort of agree with her. I mean, the whole point of going to the theatre is to be shocked and appalled and surprised and moved, isn't it?
Yes.
That's why I go anyway.
Theatre and all art, and TV, whatever, it's about challenging perceptions, exploring ideas, making people think differently. So I completely agree.
I don't agree with trigger warnings at all.
No, me neither.
So get rid
Not
of it.
unless you've got an underage audience or something.
No,
an advisory to parents or something like that. I can see if there's someone underage.
But that's not a trigger warning, is it? It's just
no,
age-appropriate
if you're
warning.
an adult, just grow up, put your big boy pants on, as they say, and get on with it.
Yeah.
It's like as a kid, if anything, any warning ever came up as a kid, say, you shouldn't watch this programme.
Straight away you want to watch it.
Straight away you want to watch it.
Yeah,
What a nonsense.
exactly.
I love Channel 4 used to love saying, the following programme contains sexual content, and those who are easily...
Exactly.
Record.
Just get a cushion. That's what we had in my house. I was allowed to watch kind of slightly racy historical dramas if I had a cushion, and then I was told to put the cushion up when there was something going on. I wasn't allowed to watch.
Okay, well,
I turned out
When I was young, we weren't allowed to watch Benny Hill. We weren't allowed to watch Dave Allen. We weren't allowed to watch Monty Python. There was a whole load of things. I mean, TV used to be filthy, absolutely filthy. It did in all fronts. At 7 o'clock at night, Benny Hill running around after naked women, and then this was regarded as family viewing. When you look at it now, it's absolutely horrendous.
Crackdown on benefit cheats with AI sleuths, Andy. And this is interesting. It's just this kind of, we're talking about mental health, and every policy should be considered whether or not it has an impact on your mental health. I have to say, when Rishi Sunak said every aspect of your life is going to change in the next 5 years because of AI, yesterday I was like, I don't want every aspect of my life to change in the next 5 years. I'm not sure I feel about that.
I'm not sure I would have said that if I was him, even though he might be right, particularly where AI is concerned. The Department for Work and Pensions is investing £70 million in identifying patterns around welfare fraud. And this is a big issue. There was £6.4 billion lost to fraud in the last 12 months. I think this is a really good example of where you can actually, just looking at AI, yes, there are challenges, and yes, we need guardrails, we need to safeguard people from the more nefarious aspects of the technology, but fundamentally this is just something that's going to make things faster, more efficient, more accurate ultimately, and I think it's a really good thing that they're investing in this sort of technology.
I don't know, I'm more worried about it, because I do think that, yes, I think AI is still a very blunt tool, because, it looks for patterns, but it doesn't get under the skin of human issues. Why do people make the decisions they make? Do you know what I mean? It just says, OK, this person has done the wrong thing, so we're going to get rid of them. I really worry about it for banking, particularly because so many people struggle with credit, or there's a personal reason for why, they've defaulted on payment, and banks just don't care about any of that.
Well, I think the key thing is businesses, they have a responsibility to continue to employ human beings.
Absolutely, yeah.
Who can,
interpret the results.
Exactly.
But if they're just relying on AI to make quick decisions, it's going to be very disappointing.
Oh dear, I'm not sure. Just anything AI makes me feel a bit sort of goosebumpy. Not keen on it. What about getting in an Apache helicopter, Nikki? This is what Prince William did yesterday, showing us all he still knows how to fly through the sky.
Still got it.
He's still got it.
Yeah, well, obviously he wasn't allowed to serve on the front line in the armed forces because of his proximity to the throne, but he has now been made Colonel-in-Chief of the Army Air Corps. It's a role that King Charles has passed on to him, and King Charles was quite melancholic about it and quite sad because he's really enjoyed doing it. But apparently it was time. And let's not forget that, yes, Harry knows how to fly an Apache, as he did in Afghanistan.
Very impressively.
It's very impressive being able to fly anything. I can't even drive. I mean, I can't even Imagine me in a helicopter. But yeah, I mean, it looks like it was a nice day for Dad and son.
Am
anyway.
I right in thinking this sort of thing you'd know, Eamonn? If you fly an Apache, you have one eye on one thing and you're supposed to use one eye on something else. Is that correct? There's a particular kind of multi-visual, which obviously most people can't do.
That sounds absolutely.
So it's
incredibly, very elite.
If you've ever flown a helicopter, it's a very difficult thing.
Funnily enough. Not something I've tried.
Recently, no.
Well, it is, because you have to have part of your brain which operates on the horizontal field and part of it which operates vertically. So you've got two controls to balance.
Oh, gosh, and then your eyes doing two different things.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like this, but, you know.
I was about
very
to say that.
difficult machine to get the better of. Very difficult, and but a great thing.
Hats off to Prince William, then.
Absolutely.
And his brother.
Could he do the paper review on GB News, though?
Here's a good thing. Here's a good thing that's been dropped. A Conservative revolt ends plans to criminalise the homeless.
I mean...
Oh, my goodness, thank you. Sends finally from James Cleverly, saying that what Suella Braverman said a few months ago about homelessness being a lifestyle choice is actually kind of repugnant, and we're not going to criminalise people.
precipitated her being sacked. I mean, it all was around the Met Police, not the Met Office, at the end. But actually, I think that was a turning point for her.
I do too. She just absolutely went over the line and showed a complete lack of humanity, and also just understanding, no sense engaged with brain, thinking about why on earth would anyone choose to be homeless? Come on. So, you know, that's actually good. You know, because there was this suggestion that people that smelt bad were going to be criminalised. What a lot of
I think
rubbish.
the homeless thing's getting worse, you know.
I agree. It definitely is everywhere.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
In Central, I work in the city, in Central London. Even in the last 3 months, it's got worse. And I don't know whether there's work underway to sort of funnel people into particular areas. I'm not sure, but it's incredibly visible.
When you walk past or drive past people, I mean, my heart goes out to them all the time.
Absolutely.
And I just don't think there is the will. There's the will in the voluntary sector, but I just don't think there's a bigger will than that. Let us know your views on that. We'd love to hear from you. We'll hear again from the guys in 40 minutes' time. Alex Deacon, morning.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The Fret and the Har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services have been stopped between Stoke-on-Trent and Cheadle-Hulme because of a signalling problem. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, there are southbound queues from junction 26 down to 24 near Nottingham because of roadworks. Queues too because of roadworks on the M1 in Bedfordshire, southbound just before junction 11. The A505 Luton and Dunstable turn. Queues back beyond 11A for the A5 north of Dunstable. Now in Newport, the A48 is closed westbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Caldra to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon. On the M25 in Kent, there are clockwise queues from junction 2 for the A2 to 3 for the M20, then from junction 4 at Orpington to 5 for the M26, with queues 2 on the M26 towards there. And in Surrey, the A22 remains closed in both directions at Caterham after a fuel spill. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News with Dubes & Co from 6, followed by Farage at 7. At 8, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg addresses the state of the nation. And at 9, join Patrick Christie's Tonight, followed by Headliners at 11. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I wouldn't like to be running the Bank of England with Isabel or whatever. The unemployment story today is not a story.
I'm concerned.
It's risen by 0.01%, and Isabel
0.1%.
is distressed about this.
No, I'm just saying it's a story.
It's not a story. It's not a story.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree and have this conversation
It's not
off air.
a story.
Okay.
Oh, I'm telling you.
Morning, everybody. Welcome to our bickering. It's 8 o'clock, Tuesday, the 14th of May. You are very welcome to Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Where unemployment is not a story. A groundbreaking new obesity drug could revolutionise healthcare as it helps weight loss and reduces the risks of heart attacks.
A furious reaction from China after their spies were arrested and accused of infiltrating Britain's border force.
We look at Northern Ireland today. Could it become the new asylum capital of the United Kingdom? Is that where the refugees will head after the High Court in Belfast rejected a Rwanda deportation plan?
And the Prime Minister is set to welcome farmers to Downing Street today as he announces new support for agriculture.
School staff walkout. Up to 1,500 in Birmingham are set to walk out in a row over equal pay today.
I'll tell you what, these are stories. In the sport, Aston Villa's draw with Liverpool moves them to within 1 point of the Champions League. That'll keep Tom Hanks very happy. Spurs fans have a dilemma tonight, or do they? And I have the future of golf for you.
Dull, damp day for many today, but it will be brighter for parts of Wales and southwest England compared to yesterday, and northern Scotland may well be the warm spot. Join me later for a full forecast.
So security issues leading the programme this morning in several different areas. China, namely one of those. They've reacted furiously after 3 men were yesterday charged over allegedly spying for Hong Kong.
And Northern Ireland could become the asylum capital of Britain after the High Court in Belfast rejected a Rwandan deportation plan. Today, the Prime Minister is set to welcome farmers to Downing Street as he announces new support for agriculture. Believe that when we see it. We're joined now by writer and presenter Conor Tomlinson and former strategist and advisor to Tony Blair, John McTiernan. Very good to see you both, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good to see you.
Right. Which one of these issues tickles you or disturbs you most?
Oh, look, I think we're all concerned about spies, and we all know that China is engaged in kind of big power moves. whether it's military in the South China Sea, or whether it is trying to do industrial espionage or just normal espionage. So it's good to see that our networks, our spy networks, are detecting their spies, because that is actually what the game is about.
Yeah, well, we know that obviously Labour's had a problem with infiltration and all of this. You don't need me to remind you about the huge sums of money being handed to a Labour MP, goodness knows what for in return. Would we be any stronger on China under a Labour administration in your view, John?
I think David Lammy's been really clear about what our position on China is, which is that you have to challenge China over its human rights record. You have to compete with China in terms of industrial strategies. You do have to, in some sense, find a route to collaboration on the big challenges like climate crisis, but you must never collude with China and the way China operates in the world. So, I think we'd see the same process of investigating networks.
John, just before I get a reaction from Connor to that, you say you've got to challenge China over human rights. I put it to you, people by and large don't care about human rights and China. What they do care is about people working in the security services or at Heathrow Airport, in the deportation sectors or whatever, who may have infiltrated, or Chinese technology infiltrating Britain. That's much more relevant to them, I would say, John.
Look, I think people care about all the issues. I think they care about having global action on climate. I think they care about the human rights in the XUAR. And I think, actually, they support the most modern technology being used to detect crime. So there's a balance always to be struck in these things. And under either government, Labour or Tory, all through the post-war period, we've been effectively busting spy rings. This is just the latest turn.
Yeah, and lots for you to react to there, Connor. And I suppose, is security, my question really, is security the new sort of dividing line as we head into a possible general election in a matter of weeks? It certainly seems as though Rishi Sunak was trying to suggest that yesterday.
Well, I think the Tories have been in a lot stronger of position arguing against Labour. I don't agree with John, by the way, in that Labour has been clear on this issue. For this reason, because the Conservatives and Labour are both under the advice, or at least within the paradigm, of Tony Blair, which John contributed to. I remember Tony Blair saying at a Labour Party conference that globalisation is as inevitable as the changing of the seasons, and that seems to be what's robbed our ability to negotiate, or at least show us a play of strength with China when they do things like this, because we're so reliant on them for manufacturing. We've ingratiated them into our energy industry. Under the Cameron and Osborne era, they decided to usher in a new golden age of Sino-English, China relations. They've signed on to a £500 million nuclear deal with the Chinese, with their state-funded nuclear firm on UK soil. We've had them invest in Hinkley and Sizewell, so we're wedded to Chinese cash. So I don't really see how, if we are so reliant on them for energy and manufacturing under the guise of Blair and now the Conservatives and likely the next Labour government, how we're meant to show strength against them.
And what about the issue of border security, John? We're looking at the situation in Northern Ireland with the judge disapplying parts of this new Illegal Migration Act. We know that Keir Starmer would scrap the Rwanda deportation deal. That would get us out of this problem with the Good Friday Agreement. But how is that going to help us when we're trying to get a grip of our borders?
Well, the issue is, as Keir set out last week, the issue is you have to use the same powers that you have used to smash terrorist gangs. We have to use those on people smuggling gangs. And the Rwanda deal is a cruel hoax. It's cruel because its intention is to say to people that you will go to live in a country you never want to live in if you come and stand in Britain. But it's a hoax because, what is it? The capacity is 150 or 200 people a year. More than that come in boats every day. So the Tories don't have an answer for the small boats crisis. That's one of the reasons Natalie Elphicke defected from them to the Labour Party, her utter disgust at the failure of the Tories. And they knew, they've always known, there was an issue with their legislation in relationship to the Good Friday Agreement. It's got many legal problems.
Sorry, John. I was born in 1998, so the year after Blair came to power. Do you really think that anyone's going to get particularly excited or enthused about anything that you're saying? Because nobody really believes this. I mean, so independent journalist Druck Buckunley actually is in Rwanda right now, and he's walked around the houses from the inside, and they're far nicer than anything I can currently get due to mass migration and inflation. So the idea that sending them to Rwanda is cruel is for the birds, and also if you are genuinely fleeing for your life and which is ridiculous considering you just said that they're paying criminal gangs with thousands of pounds to smuggle themselves into this country illegally. If Rwanda is a safe country, why would you be so afraid to be deported to it? Considering the UK, well, you don't get to shop around where you get your asylum claim. You go to the first safe country. So the idea that Rwanda is somehow cruel, I agree with you, it's probably not going to work. The idea is somehow cruel, though.
Well, then why should we do it? If it won't work, don't do it.
Well, we'll agree on that one. It seems there's no disagreement between you on that. Let's talk about food security. We've got Rishi Sunak hosting farmers today, his second Farm to Fork Summit. We've been speaking to a farmer this morning. He says, look, we are facing a crisis in this country. Unless we take this issue seriously, we're not earning a proper wage for what we're producing, and the supermarkets are acting like cartels and profiteering, and suddenly we won't be able to supply the nation. Is Rishi Sunak going to be doing anything about that, or is it just kind of making all the right noises? To you, Connor.
I do think it's making all the right noises. It wasn't only 3 years ago when George Eustace was Environment Secretary that they were paying off experienced elderly British native farmers to retire early because they were so resistant to their rewilding and net zero plans that he said he wanted to bring new people in. That was a quote according to the BBC. So they've just spent how many years sabotaging our national farming sector, as well as Kemi Badenoch refusing to commit to the quote bonfire of Brexit legislation with the Common Agriculture and Fishing Policy, which kept us behind in terms of being able to produce the right amount of food for national self-sustainability. They've sabotaged our agriculture sector, and now they're turning around saying we've got your back because they're worried about losing votes in the next general election. I mean, I'm not surprised that farmers are so annoyed because it doesn't seem either party is going to back them properly at this point. It seems Jeremy Clarkson's done more for farmers than any politician in the last couple of decades.
Right, Connor. Connor, I'm really enthused listening to you speak directly like that, because I just wonder how stupid these politicians think people are. Suddenly they wave these flags and they say, we are the friends of British farmers and da-da-da-da. And they're so obviously not. They couldn't care less.
Yeah, quite. And they wonder whether absolutely hemorrhaging support from everyone, from young people to the people that grow our food and create our infrastructure. I mean, they expect it. Rishi Sunak keeps saying the plan is working. And Keir Starmer says he's a change candidate. Everyone that looks outside and has seen politics for the last 30 years sees all the infrastructure crumbling, everything being more expensive, food being more scarce and expensive, and nobody seems to be offering an actual sustainable plan. And they wonder why the majority of voters are not voting for either party, which are going to stay at home at the next election. I mean, if they're so worried about democracy as they will keep banging on about, give us something to vote for God's sake.
OK, folks, thank you both very much indeed. Very interesting listening to you both. We'll say goodbye there. And what did you got to think about and what you got to say about what the lads had to say there? Incidentally, a big nature survey undertaken this week. The results published today. Foxes in decline, hedgehogs in decline, red squirrels in decline, sparrows in decline, butterflies in decline, mice in decline. We could go on and on and on about this, but British nature is in crisis. That's related to farming, and every political party has failed to save wildlife. Your views on that one, let us know if you think that's important or not.
OK, we're turning our attention to Birmingham now. Up to 1,500 school staff are set to walk out in a row over equal pay during SATs exams this week.
Workers, including teaching assistants, catering staff, grounds maintenance workers, will join in the action. And it comes as Birmingham City Council bosses have been slammed for delays in settling equal pay claims lodged by women workers.
Well, let's cross to Birmingham Crown Court and speak with GB News West Midlands reporter Jack Carson. Goodness me, not just a walkout, but this is in court today.
Yeah, so of course this has been in court for months now as the council tries to work out how it can sort out its job evaluation scheme and its settlement with the GMB union. They say they've got 3,000 equal pay claims, which of course their members have put forward to them. Because this all links, of course, doesn't it, to the reason why Birmingham City Council went bankrupt in the first place, that £700 million worth of equal pay claims hadn't yet been settled, and therefore the council couldn't confidently say that it could balance the books. And of course it issued that notice of effective bankruptcy. We've had now this implementation, the start of the cuts, of course, as the council tries to reach this settlement, but the G&B union quite simply say that this is now taking too long. They balloted a couple of months ago with their members to see if they had enough support to walk out over the fact that this settlement hasn't yet already been made. And today 1,500 workers from 35 schools across the city do just that. And it's not teachers, it's nothing, it's simply teaching assistants, it's council staff within schools, it's maintenance staff, it's the cleaners, it's the people that aren't, you know, on the best necessarily wages, the highest wages within those schools, that they say they've been mistreated and of course not paid fairly in comparison to other male-dominated jobs that the council employs, such as bin men. That's been one of the biggest examples, of course, since all these claims started. Quite simply, the G&B say they have had enough, but the council do say, and the council spokesperson said that the council has been engaging with the G&B on the matters of equal pay since November 2021, and that they made an agreement with trade unions back in October last year in order to try and work their way through these settlement claims. And the council say they would encourage the G&B to explore solutions working together, as it remains, they say, committed to restoring resolving those historic equal pay issues and settling the legitimate claims from their employers. But the G&B organiser Alice Reynolds, who's one of the people that has been part of this campaign since the start, says that Birmingham's equal pay crisis only ends when the council bosses hand back the wages which she says they've stolen from women workers. And the reason they're taking that action this week, as you mentioned, is because it's SATS week. The G&B said the schools cannot run without those teaching assistants and support workers. It's a message really to Birmingham City Council to say that you need to settle these equal pay claims, pay these women what these 3,000 people that have claimed for say that they are worth. And of course, you know, they say taking strike action is always the last resort, but they say they've simply had enough of these council's delays. Here in Victoria Square in the city centre where I am now, we're expecting a demonstration of a third of those people walking out today, around 500 people, which will bring you a little bit later today.
OK, thank you very much indeed. We'll have a look now at some of the other stories making their way into the newsroom this morning. The Office for National Statistics has revealed the rate of UK unemployment rose to 4.3% in the 3 months to March, up from 4.2%. That's a rise of 0.1% for the previous 3 months.
Well, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has also been reacting to the average earnings growth this morning. It remains unchanged at 6% in the 3 months to March and lifted 2.4% after taking CPI into account. He says this is the 10th month in a row that wages have risen faster than inflation, which will help with the cost of living pressures on families.
The Chief Inspector of Prisons has raised concerns that dangerous criminals are being freed too early to cut overcrowding. He's highlighted that the early release scheme announced by the government last year is causing high-risk offenders to be let out, some of whom are at risk to children.
A groundbreaking study found that weight loss drugs like Ozempic can reduce the risk of heart and stroke by a fifth. Cardiologists have said that these weight loss jabs are the most significant development in heart disease since the 1990s and are a game changer for their patients.
The King's first civilian gallantry list has been revealed, rewarding acts of bravery. One of those on the list is Georgia Laurie from Sandhurst in Berkshire, who punched a crocodile in the face when it attacked her twin Melissa while they were in Mexico. Others on the list include civilians who intervened in knife attacks, civilian arrests and helping strangers.
Every time we read that gallantry award for punching a crocodile in the nose, it feels like something out of Crocodile Dundee. It sort of makes me think it's fictional, but I mean, imagine the bravery. And it's something about the bond between twins as well that is so wonderful about that story. I love hearing about bravery and human nature overcoming adversity. It's absolutely fantastic.
And what is also absolutely fantastic is that the Television Radio Industry Club have put GB Breakfast forward for the Best News Programme category and the Best News Presenter, some young Irish chap there grabbing attention there. So that little logo on your screen there, if you scan that on your phone, you can then go to the websites involved. It's poll-trick.org.uk, and you'll get the chance to vote there for everybody on GB News who has been nominated. And you can do that, vote early, vote often, vote now, make it count. And thank you very much indeed in advance.
Thank you very much. Let's get a check on the forecast. Word has it that the hottest place in the country today is Scotland. Here's Alex Deakin with the forecast.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The Fret and the Har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Now, there's still plenty of time to win our biggest cash prize so far. That is £20,000.
Yeah, imagine having that in your bank account this summer. Well, this is how it could be yours.
Don't miss your chance to win our biggest cash prize so far. A totally terrific £20,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer spectacular. You could use that cash to splash out on a holiday, make the garden glam, buy a new car, or just save it for a rainy day. Whatever you'd spend £20,000 on, make sure you don't miss the chance to make it yours. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Well, we've got the break, and then we've got Paul Coyte after that. And he has got the sport after this.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Today marks the 13th anniversary of the wedding of the Prince and Princess of Wales, and they've released an unseen photograph of their wedding day. It's an absolutely wonderful picture, and joining me now to discuss this is the former BBC Royal correspondent, Michael Cole. Michael, always a delight. What a great way to start the week to have you on the show on a Monday. Britain's favourite royal couple, a sensational picture reminding us of why they're so wonderful and popular.
Good afternoon, Martin. Yes, and I think we can, on behalf of the whole country, send our congratulations. 13 years, 3 beautiful children being brought up properly, and very, very good going. And I have to tell you this, Martin, very close to home for you. a 13th wedding anniversary is a lace wedding anniversary. And there she is, dressing in lace. Nottingham and lace were once synonymous. And what a beautiful picture this is. Not a picture contemporary from the wedding day when the prince had changed from his red tunic, which he wore for his wedding at Westminster Abbey, into a guards officer's day dress, a uniform with the frogging. Very, very handsome. I know that the Queen insisted that he wore the red tunic of the guards. I'm not sure whether he was very happy about that because he did most of his service in the RAF. And I personally feel that the RAF blue uniform with the white bride's dress would have been better. I always think when I see red and white like that, I always think of a barber's pole. Of course, because she's undergoing treatment and we wish her so much better as soon as possible. There's not a new photograph.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. Then catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together. For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Now, the British Speed Golf Pairs Championship returned on Sunday, and Paul is here to tell us more about that.
You know what? Forget Arsenal. It's speed golf. This is the future of golf, my friend. This is where it's at.
Right, so is it a secret in the word speed?
Yes. So what you do is that it's not only your round, but it's how quick you get around. So you've got to run up, hit the ball, off you go, run after the next shot. Then you just keep going as quick as you can. How quickly do you reckon it is? Speed Golf Championships, it was a San Martin's golf. I think we got there. This is them doing it. They're doing it now. They do it in pairs, up to 7 clubs each, alternate shots, lowest score plus the time to complete the course. Luke Willett and Luke Bone there, who won it, who are PGA professionals. So they set a new record for speed. So going around a golf course usually takes, what, 3.5, 4 hours? For me,
yeah,
longer?
certainly easy, yeah.
How long do you reckon they did it?
They did it, 18 holes at 5 minutes a hole?
See where you go.
What's that? 5 years 40.
Yeah.
That was 5, 90 minutes, an hour and a half.
I would guess about that. 37 minutes and 43 seconds.
There's no enjoyment in that. It's not a sport.
You know, as it was a good walk spoiled, wasn't
It
it?
is a good walk. W.C. Field said that, yeah. I just look at that and I think, there could be no enjoyment in that whatsoever.
Yeah. It's
either watching it or
You know what, they're just
playing
trying to invent a sport, aren't they? Trying to invent a sport.
Yeah.
Let's hit it and run after that and say, but you know what, if it's your new world record, you can't argue with that.
Golf's a pretty good sport without being touched or impeded anyway.
Drives me crazy, though.
Yeah, absolutely true, I agree.
I stopped last year. I had such an embarrassing round. It was one of these... You've played in these all the time, it's one of these pro-am things, and it was so embarrassing. My partners, I'm hitting the ball, they were walking off in front of me, and I was just left there on my... And it was just like... I ended up quitting at 15. I said, that's it, I'm off. And I've actually retired.
It's important to play with people of the same ability as you.
Exactly. So when are we playing? When are we playing?
Right.
We're just not going to run anywhere.
Saturday night, you got the boxing to look forward to in
absolutely.
Dubai.
It's a really important fight. So Tyson Fury against Alexander Usyk is for the undisputed World Heavyweight Championship. And it's going on in Saudi Arabia. Of course it is. It's in Saudi Arabia. Tyson Fury's dad, John, is a bit of a character. He's got himself into trouble there. I don't know whether we've got any of this. I don't want to actually show exactly what happened. It does get a little bit nasty. He ended up head-butting one of Usyk's entourage. I don't really want to see him do that, but there we are. Look, they're squaring up to each other. You couldn't really see. It was just all a bit of argy-bargy, which often happens in these things. But then he ends up... He was saying that this one of Fury's entourage was disrespecting him. He's nutted him, basically, and he's ended up with blood on his head, and he's then offered his sincere apologies, but accused Stanislav Stupchuk as being a disrespectful fella.
Yes.
And so anyway, you don't want to be seeing it. It's just getting a bit nasty. But anyway, the fight should be huge, and it's the first time that the heavyweight championship's been undisputed, because, you know, there's so many belts. You know, they make up another one every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So this one will be undisputed. The last person to hold it was 25 years ago, was Lennox Lewis.
Goodness me.
So it should be a heck of a fight. Yeah, I really look forward to it.
I remember when I started out in sport, I was a boxing reporter and used to get a seat round the ring, and I was assigned to Barry McGuigan while he was still an amateur.
All right, yeah.
And
Barney Eastwood was there on the corner.
Barney Eastwood was his manager, yeah. And I sat there, and I remember writing my notes down for the 10:30 news bulletin after news at 10.
Yeah.
And just feeling this wetness hit me here, and thinking, you know, what is this? You know, it's writing away and whatever. And then realising at one stage it was blood. Oh, it was blood. He used to smack the guy, and the slobbers and everything would come out of their mouth, and the blood and the spit and everything.
So you'll like wipe off. Goodness me. But you know what? It's one of those sports that, if you've never been, and it's whether you want to or whether you don't, it's quite shocking the first time you ever sit so close.
All the noise.
And then the noise, and
the thud of flesh on flesh.
That's it.
Is pretty bad.
Ultimate pugilistic art.
Absolutely.
There it is.
I saw a guy die in the ring once.
Did you?
Yeah, being hit and died. It's not.
Yeah, well, this is what happened. This is the story that happened yesterday. That happened over the weekend, which is just a shocking story. But then it opens the debate again of whether boxing is a sport, whether it should be allowed. It's one of those things that I think everybody feels uncomfortable watching when something like that happens. But then it opens a whole new debate about other sports and how dangerous they are. But of course, it did happen this weekend, which is very sad.
Paul, thanks very much indeed. Thank you. Right, we'll take a break.
Yeah, and after the break, we will be going through the papers with Andy Williams and Nikki Hodgson. See you in a moment.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. Train services have been stopped between Stoke-on-Trent and Cheadle-Hulme because of a signalling problem. On the M1 in Nottinghamshire, there are southbound queues from junction 26 down to 24 in Nottingham because of roadworks. On the M1 in Bedfordshire, there are southbound queues from junction 11A for the A5 north of Dunstable to 11, the A505 Luton and Dunstable turn because of roadworks. Now in Newport, the A48 is closed westbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Caldra to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon. On the M25 west of London, 2 lanes are now closed anti-clockwise at junction 14 at Heathrow after an accident, with queues from junction 17 at Maple Cross. And in Surrey, the A22 remains closed in both directions between junction 6 of the M25 at Godstone and Wops's Lodge roundabout at Caterham after a fuel spill on Sunday. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, GB News brings you accurate reporting of the day's topical agenda.
When the news breaks, wherever and whenever it's happening,
we'll be there.
This is GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Bev Turner. Thank you for joining us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 8:32. Welcome back. Let's take a look at what's making the news this hour with the author and broadcaster Nikki Hodgson and the political commentator Andy Williams. Welcome back to both of you. Just a prior warning, we will break away briefly when Labour pops up for a quick chat in a moment. But let's start with you, Andy, and the latest statistics out of the ONS this morning in relation to unemployment, but also wage growth and the impact that this has on whether or not we're going to see an interest rate cut for the Bank of England, how that affects all of us.
Yeah, I think that's the really interesting bit here, Isabel, is that wage growth is up 6% year on year. That's higher than economists were forecasting. And obviously that means that the prospect of an interest rate cut is now less likely. If inflation is staying stubbornly high, we're going to see interest rates remain right up there at 5.25%. Obviously, the government desperately wants interest rates to come down as far as possible before the election, because we've got hundreds of thousands of people whose mortgages are set to renew. So it really affects the amount of money that people have in their pockets.
And, you know, in terms of unemployment, there's an increased number of people out of work, and these job vacancies remain unfilled in many, many sectors.
Yeah,
what's happening?
Absolutely. And we have some key areas such as care and health, where we've got so many vacancies. So it's getting harder and harder to argue that we don't need any immigration because we've got all these roles that need filling, and we've got skilled workers from abroad that need to come over and do them. I think the other thing is that we've got this huge swathe of people that don't want to work at the minute. I mean, it'd be nice to have that choice, I think, for lots of people, but especially older workers. So many people during COVID just thought, I've had enough, I don't want to do this anymore. And it's very hard to persuade those people to come back into their fields.
Well, that seems to be the challenge of the era, doesn't it, for whichever party's in power next, is how to coax people back into work as unemployment continues to creep up. What about this, Nikki? I don't know if you're OK, sorry, we're going to pause on that thought and come back to both of you, because I'm told we have Ali McGovern, the Acting Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, joining us from Westminster this morning. Very good morning to you. Thank you for using an umbrella and putting up with the rain this morning. Not ideal. We were just discussing the economic picture and the latest news this morning around wages. There has been wage growth higher than a lot of economists were expecting. What does this mean from Labour's perspective?
Well, wage growth is coming from a low base in that, you know, for the past decade or so, people's wages in real terms hadn't gone up much at all. We've got big problems in the economy, though, if you look at the unemployment rate ticking up on the quarter this morning, and employment, the percentage of people in the economy who are working, there was a strong growing trend that stopped during the pandemic, and it has fallen and is plateauing, and we don't seem to be recovering. We should be in a recovery phase in our economy at the moment. You know, the economy should be growing after coming out of that post-pandemic crash and recession. We should be growing now, and that doesn't seem to be feeding through to the labour market. That's because there's lots of parts of our country where we haven't got enough good jobs. The country is still a lot sicker, a lot more unwell than it was some time ago. That's not just about the pandemic, that was happening before the pandemic. So there are big structural problems in our economy that we really need to deal with, and Labour's got a plan for that. Yeah, and if you look at what Labour's plan for that is, it's talking about workers' rights, things like higher sick pay, a repeal of trade union laws, more flexible working, a right to switch off. I thought you said a moment ago that you wanted to see growth. Growth is our priority, and the New Deal for working people is part of that. First, I must say I do think the NHS problems are having a big impact on our economy. That's why we need to get 2 million more appointments into the system so that people can get that help that they need to recover. But if you look at the New Deal for working people, we all want a flexible labour market, but at the moment, flexibility can too often be on one side. And if you want people who have been unwell to come back to work and crucially to be able to stay in work, then they need to know that if their condition, is up and down, that flexibility will be there to support them. And that's what the New Deal for working people is all about, and those rights at work are all about. It's also about wages. If you're on a 0 hours contract, and then we've got way too many people on a 0 hours contract at the moment, if you're on a 0 hours contract, you simply don't know from 1 week to the next what you're going to be earning. That is not good for your level of wages. So it's about dealing with those problems that we've got, helping people to earn more, have more predictable income, and that will help our economy get growing again.
Nobody knows when the general election is going to be. It certainly felt like round one yesterday, didn't it, with the two speeches from Keir Starmer and also from Rishi Sunak, and this big debate about security. Rishi Sunak claiming that Sir Keir Starmer would put us all in danger. I mean, he's got a point, hasn't he? Just 5 years ago, he was supporting Jeremy Corbyn, who wanted to scrap the army and support Hamas.
He does not have a point. He does not have a point, not on national security. If you look at what Ben Wallace has said, the former Defence Secretary, that the armed forces were hollowed out, and that's on the Conservatives' watch. I think that Labour's record in government, last time we were in government, was strong. Keir Starmer's a former Director of Public Prosecutions. He put away, very serious, horrendous criminals, and national security is the first duty of us all. So I don't think Rishi Sunak had a point. I think he is, clutching at straws here, and I wish the general election would start. If actually we are in sort of beginnings of the general election, just call the thing and let's get on with it. I think people are sick of waiting, to be quite honest with you.
OK, well, nobody knows when it will be. Alison McGovern, Shadow Work and Pensions Secretary, thanks very much for your time this morning. He refused to rule out it possibly being in July. Who knows whether or not that will be the case. We still have Nikki Hodgson and Andy Williams in our company. Thoughts on what she had to say this morning?
Well, I think one really, important point Ali McGovern makes there is that wages are recovering, yes, faster than expected, but from a really low base. We did see stagnant wage growth for 10 years in this country, and our economic recovery post-COVID has been the worst in the G7. So there is catching up to do, and I think there's some of the structural problems that she outlines there are absolutely right. We have an NHS that's not serving people properly. We also have, as Nikki was saying a moment ago, people who are not necessarily wanting to go into work. So there are all sorts. It's a really complicated challenge facing the UK economy.
And then the Great Resignation, this discussion about younger people just saying, I won't take the jobs that you're offering me because they don't suit me anymore. Maybe I want more rights or more privileges. It depends how you look at it, I suppose. It's complicated. It's very complicated.
I think the important thing is people feel worse off. Pay just hasn't kept pace with the cost of living.
But will they feel better off under Labour or the Conservatives? And I suppose that's what the election campaign will have to work out in terms of what the electorate thinks, or maybe people just think they're ready for a change. In terms of that, we're going to take a quick break. After that, we'll go through more of the papers with Nikki and Andy.
...2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Nigel Farage, and this is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
I love the royal family now.
So do I.
I was always a little bit ambivalent, but I think you get it with age, don't you? And also, they are our British identity, so we lose them at our peril.
They're a bit of escapism too.
And don't we need it?
And they're cute, those kids.
They are.
And I like the fact that the boys misbehave at the photo shoots.
I
think
love
it's terrific.
Louis. I have a real soft spot for Louis. Well, we've had this picture released this morning of Princess Charlotte on her 9th birthday, and our royal correspondent Cameron Walker joins us to bask in the glow of a 9-year-old girl having a birthday. Go on, Cameron.
Absolutely. Happy birthday to Princess Charlotte of Wales. Of course, Kensington Palace released the photograph in the last hour on their social media channels. It was taken by the Princess of Wales, Princess Charlotte's mother, in the grounds of Windsor Castle in the last couple of days, and it is a very modern way that they released it. Again, similar to Prince Louis last week, they released it on social media channels first, thanking the public directly for their kind messages of support for Princess Charlotte's birthday, unlike what they usually would do, which is release it to the press under embargo the day before, so the papers can have it the next morning. But just looking at this picture here, her face, Princess Charlotte's face, it reminds me of the late Queen Elizabeth II, and also her father, Prince William. It seems to be the same smile, which clearly shows that they're a family, of course. And she's got some nice kind of braided bracelets on her right wrist as well, looking in details in the photograph. But she's very feisty, this 9-year-old girl. I think she's perhaps a little bit more outgoing than her brother, Prince George. Princess Catherine described her actually recently as the one in charge.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry. Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Just before we return to Andy and Nikki, I want to show you some pictures that have just come into us. Lots of you will be looking ahead to the D-Day commemorations next month. Well, you're looking at the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak there, who was joined by the Defence Secretary in Horse Guards Parade here in the capital. And they hosted a torch lighting event this morning with veterans and looking ahead to that commemoration. And this has just happened in the last few moments.
D-Day, of course, being?
D-Day, of course, being the event that my grandfather was there, D-Day +1, which was stopping the invasion of the United Kingdom. Of June the 7th?
6th.
6th. Well, that's when
+1 would have been 7th.
Yeah.
Right, Nikki Hodgson and Andy Williams with the papers. And exercise, Nikki. Exercise can flush out brain toxins better than sleeping.
So, you know, there's so much discussion now about sleep science and how to optimise your sleep. I feel like everybody is obsessed with it and tracking it. It's very trendy to do that. We still don't actually know what sleep is for. So there's been this theory for a long time that it was about cleaning your brain of toxins and therefore you can refresh for the next day. But apparently that's not true.
Really?
And it's a study done on mice that proves that actually being awake and moving around is more effective.
I don't believe it.
This is going to upset a lot of people.
How do you refresh and recharge then?
Well, maybe it's just you just need a break from thinking about all the stuff that worries you, and that's why you recharge. Not that there's actually some deep cleaning process going on.
So the theory is you could actually do without sleep?
Well, you definitely can't do without sleep, no. But sleep is not for what we thought it was for, the cleaning. So,
there's definitely there's a focus aspect to exercise, isn't there, that I think is really, really hard to replicate with anything else. If you're going on a long run or if you're doing a HIIT class or whatever, or yoga or whatever it is, you're so in that moment and just focus on it. It is, it is. And I think that's incredibly important.
I mean, have you never just gone to bed because you just fed up of thinking about rubbish? I do that quite often. I just can't get my brain to shut up anymore, so I just go to sleep.
Right, well, apply your brain, the two of you, to the countryside and wildlife. Now, the government are meeting with farmers today, and there's a big survey today about what we think about wildlife. Romana says Jeremy Clarkson seems to have a better grip of farming than any politician, and that's saying something. Too many politicians have no practical experience. Kirsty says the wildlife is under threat, more from urban expansion than farming. I now have foxes living under my shed as their local environment is being built upon. Andy, what do you think about the way we treat our wildlife environment, or are we doing it right, or should something more be done about it?
Well, I'm no expert on this, but I know that the National Trust, the RSPB and a handful of other organisations, some of the major sort of conservation organisations in the UK, have got together this morning to say that whoever the next government is, they need to focus a lot more on this issue. There are a number of biodiversity targets in place for 2030 that apparently we're way behind on. So there's clearly a feeling among the people who do know what they're talking about here that there's not been enough prioritisation afforded to it. So I think it's something that definitely need to look at.
Yeah, I think people misjudge, politicians probably misjudge the public's appetite towards and warmth towards wildlife. Yes, there's no money in it, but there's definitely votes in it. You know, and sometimes the politicians just follow the money a bit too much. But I think that people will be very, very sad to see any further loss and degradation of our biodiversity. And so I think it's fantastic to see this kind of unified approach from conservationists on this. Whether or not it will change the dial, I suspect not, but
I think one of the other issues from a political standpoint is that, yes, I'm sure there's a financial aspect, but also even people who represent rural constituencies, they're spending 3 or 4 days a week in Westminster. They're basically urban. They've become urbanised politicians. They live in a very different world.
Andy, sunscreen all year round or not?
Well, so the health expert Tim Spector, who's become a huge phenomenon, you know, big expert, he has a podcast, founded the Zoe app. He's come under fire for saying that people shouldn't be wearing factor 50 SPF 50 sunscreen all year round. So there's been a growing trend towards wearing sunscreen all year round, and he says you actually don't need to. It blocks I think he says, blocks our natural defences. And he was suggesting that actually wearing sun cream all the time is more of a sort of beauty thing from that perspective to stop the ageing process than it is actually a health consideration.
And heaven forbid, perhaps a money-making thing then as well. You have to pay, don't you, to buy these sun creams.
My worry is that I just do not get enough sunshine. I don't get enough vitamin D, and if I count the amount of sun I would pick up during a day, it's minutes, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, something like that.
I mean, I've got to be honest, I do wear it on my face and, like, upper body all the time because I am paranoid about ageing. There's no point having Botox if you don't wear sunscreen. There isn't. But the thing I would say is that, yeah, it still feels so good to have a natural tan, doesn't it? I do love getting out in it.
I love vitamin D. Yeah. And I know you can still get vitamin D through sun cream, but I just feel like I don't know.
You've just got to get your legs out, that's it.
True,
head
right. In the sun, legs out. That's
exactly.
the key to everything.
But I thought it was interesting that this coincided with, you've seen yesterday, Chris Bryant, the Labour MP,
yes.
he announced that his skin cancer had returned.
Into his lungs.
And melanoma appeared in his... I didn't know that you could find skin cancer in your lung.
Yeah, I didn't either. I learnt something there.
So really interesting, and that just reminds us that you have to be really careful.
Yeah. Nikki, this story made me laugh because I sort of oohed and ahed when I saw it in the paper, going, ooh, Dyson's bringing out an electric mop. And then we worked out that neither of us do any mopping at all. So I don't know why this excites me, other than I love my Dyson Hoover because it doesn't have a cable.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's a bit of a game changer. Other brands are available. So I'm just excited when they innovate something new. And also it's a British company, isn't it?
Well, just the concept of an electric mop. I mean, I was thinking it mopped for you when I first heard of it. A bit like, robot vacuums. But no, it's £599. So you've got that to splash right now. But apparently it mops without really getting anything wet, which is kind of incredible. The floor is dry after like 2 minutes.
Does it blow dry as it goes?
Yeah.
One of those hand dryers as well.
It does sound really fancy. And apparently the way we mop is really inefficient and really dirty in the UK, which
I often think that, because a lot of
just pushing the dirt around. But I did buy my child a toy, which is a kind of parrot that you push along, and then I realised that she learnt how to mop from doing that. So she had the mop out the other week. So I was like, I don't need to bother anymore.
Yeah, leave her to...
She's copying my husband.
There is a whole issue about cleaning, particularly in toilet areas with mops and things, which has to be very unhygienic when you think about it.
Just British people are just not clean. The way we wash up, leaving water in the sink to clean things. Like, you can't do that. The European way is to run the tap, which is what I do.
Or like
on the odd occasion that I do any kind of housework.
Or just the dishwasher.
Interesting.
It's my preferred method.
Do you think James Dyson's on a one-man mission to bankrupt us with all of these expensive household
Good for
gadgets.
the economy.
He doesn't even build them here. He builds
They're in Singapore, aren't they?
It's all in Singapore,
He moved
isn't
it.
it?
There's something going on in Malmesbury.
Yeah.
A lot of the sprods, I think, are in Malmesbury.
Dangerous prisoners released early to ease overcrowding despite objections from staff. Tell us more, Nikki.
Well, this is actually in Scotland, and it's to do with massively overcrowded jails, which we talk about regularly. And yet, the staff themselves, the people that work the closest with these prisoners, are saying this person is not suitable for release. You know, they've been violent towards me, they've been violent with people in the prison, and yet they just have to let them go because there's no other option. And also, as we were talking about before with homelessness, these people have nowhere to go. They end up homeless, so the cycle begins again. Prison doesn't work, and we haven't figured out what does instead.
Yeah, and I think there's a story in England that by the end of June, all of our prisons will be full up, which is why they are getting rid of early release of so many prisoners at the moment.
Yeah.
And I do think it's not got enough attention as a story. You know, you think of the Conservatives as the party of law and order, and I know Alex Chalk has been sort of tearing his hair out over all of this, the Justice Secretary. But do people really want to have violent criminals not carrying out their sentences because there's no space in prisons?
What politicians don't realise is people be very happy to pay to have people locked up. So when we're told that our taxes are going to build prison cells, we're all quite happy about that, but politicians don't get that.
I don't see why you can't just, you know, increase the numbers in a cell. I mean, the violent criminals,
like other countries,
murderers,
well, only because
offenders.
they attack each other, and that causes even more trouble for the staff, I suppose.
What always gets me when you see prison cells, when you see programmes like Porridge and whatever, they've got one loo in a prison cell that's occupied by 2 people at least. So you're not cordoned off or anything. Everything has to be done.
You're just got to get on with it.
In the open.
Just got to get on with it. Not that I've been to prison, but
I couldn't
share
a cell.
I've visited, but yeah.
I couldn't share a cell.
Well, you don't have a choice, would you, if you're a violent criminal?
I would
though?
say, excuse me, I don't share a cell.
Can you imagine? You'd have to get yourself in solitary so that you could be left alone.
Yeah, there you go.
I would have to run the wing. I'd have to have a solitary cell.
Oh, I can see that. I can definitely see you doing
solitary. Royal Albert Hall members accused of cashing in on seats of charity concerts. This is in The Guardian, Andy.
This is really interesting. So about a quarter of the seats at the Royal Albert Hall are owned by people who are heirs or descendants of the people who funded it being built in the first place about 150 years ago. And not all of them, obviously, but a lot of these people are regularly selling their tickets on for a profit on ticketing websites. And I think most people would agree, look, it's their property. These seats are literally their property. It's up to them in most cases. But there is a growing trend for charity concerts, for tickets for things like Teenage Cancer Trust, and there was a concert given by The Who there the other week that was for charity, and they are also being flogged for personal profit on these sorts of websites, and that seems just a bit grim, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a bit grim. Well, I'll tell you what hasn't been grim, has been both of you this morning. I hope you've enjoyed joining us to go through the papers. We'll have a little look at what you've been saying as well before we conclude the hour. We've been talking about farmers. That's the big story this morning. Lots of them descending on Downing Street today. John says they should stop doing solar panels and giving up farmers' land for big companies to reduce their carbon footprint. Other people complaining that farmers have been using their land to do nothing with it and to put these energy-saving things in there.
Pamela says farmers have always looked after wildlife. It's the green nutters that are causing the problems with wildlife. Protect the farmers. Well, that's the thing. There seems to be politicians are rushing to the aid of farmers recently in the past year or so, and there has to be a reason. There has to be votes in that, and that's obviously why they're doing it. Then you won't hear about it. Thank you very much indeed, Nikki and Alex. Here's Alex Deakin.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, The rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The fret and the har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. On the M898 in Renfrewshire, there are southbound queues after an accident between Junction 1 at Erskine and the M8 at Erskine Bridge. Train services are suspended between Stoke-on-Trent and Cheadle-Hulme because of a signalling problem. In Newport, the A48 is closed southbound from Junction 24 of the M4 at the Cauldre to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon causing queues. On the M25 west of London, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed anti-clockwise with someone's broken down at Junction 14 at Heathrow, with queues from Junction 17 at Maple Cross. On the M25 in Surrey, 2 out of 4 lanes are closed clockwise just after Junction 9 at Leatherhead after a breakdown causing queues for around 5 miles. Also in Surrey, the A22 remains closed at Caterham after a fuel spill, and in East Sussex, the A21 is partly blocked by an accident between Hurst Green and Roberts Bridge causing delays. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text PRIZE to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people. To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News.
The People's Channel.
GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Good morning. It's coming up to 9 o'clock. It is Tuesday, the 14th of May.
Very nice to see you. This is Breakfast on GB News. Eamonn Holmes and Isabel Webster.
A furious reaction from China after their spies are arrested and accused of infiltrating Britain's border force. Earlier, we spoke to the Secretary of State for Defence, Grant Shapps.
Our relationship with China in particular is a complex one, obviously, because there's enormous amounts of trade and a lot of areas where we do have to cooperate, but just because there's simply no other way to get stuff done.
Talking about Northern Ireland, could it become the new asylum capital of the UK after the High Court in Belfast rejected the Rwanda deportation plan?
Unemployment rises, wage growth slows, and future interest rate cuts look unlikely. We heard from Labour about our stagnating economy.
It was a strong growing trend. That stopped during the pandemic and it has fallen and is plateauing. And we don't seem to be recovering. We should be in a recovery phase in our economy at the moment.
Prime Minister is set to welcome farmers to Downing Street today as he announces new support for agriculture. Talking about that next.
After the wettest 18 months on record, I'm here in Downing Street where the PM wants us all to buy more British fruit and vegetables.
And is Britain entering a new era of naval shipbuilding? Mark White's been looking at the future of the Royal Navy.
Dull, damp day for many today, but it will be brighter for parts of Wales and southwest England compared to yesterday, and northern Scotland may well be the warm spot. Join me later for a full forecast.
Visitors to Downing Street today, the Prime Minister is welcoming farmers to Number 10 to take part in his second UK Farm to Fork Summit.
But as the government's announced support measures to help farmers who are facing real problems, they say they're not easy to solve.
Well, joining us now, GB News political editor Christopher Hope, who'll be invited along to what's going on there. So, are we seeing farmers turn up at the front door then?
We are, Eamonn, and morning, Isabel. That's right. Behind me, you can see a big JCB digger with some bales of hay. That's meant to symbolise what's going on in Downing Street today. 70 or so farmers, food producers are meeting. The government's very worried that after, and it's raining, of course, in Number 10, like it always is when I'm standing here. After 18 months of the wettest on record and crops ruined over the winter for many farmers, they're worried that we're buying and importing too much overseas food and fruit and vegetables. The numbers are quite startling. 17% of fruit is produced here, 55% of vegetables produced here, the rest is imported. And they're worried that if we keep doing that, we're not going to have enough resilience here to produce our own food and fruit and vegetables. The concern for many, though, farmers, particularly tenant farmers, is that landowners are now incentivised to rewild areas rather than grow food, and that's the problem farmers are facing. If it's better off to use government money to just rewild areas rather than grow produce, why not do that? So I think there's an attempt to reset that balance.
Isn't there, between what I would technically be DEFRA and trying to look out for the environment, and also trying to make sure that we as customers and indeed farmers also, we pay a fair price and farmers get a fair wage, and it's a difficult balance to strike.
Isabel, that's totally right. There's been a tension between farmers and supermarkets going back decades. We all remember that, of course. Farmers think that supermarkets are hanging on to too much of the profits, that as prices go up and their raw materials go up, they're not allowed to pass that on to the customer because supermarkets won't let them. The government's publishing what is called a new food security index to ensure the UK is resilient to shocks to the market and extreme weather. I guess the government would say, look closely what you're buying when you're buying fruit and veg in the supermarket, and try and buy British to support our farmers.
Good advice. Thanks very much indeed, Christopher.
A former senior Royal Navy commander has warned that the new wave of ships and submarines being planned may be obsolete before they've even entered service.
Well, earlier we spoke to the Defence Secretary, Grant Shapps.
We are living in more dangerous times, clearly. We've got a war in Europe with Ukraine being illegally invaded. We've got conflict in the Middle East, and we've got the rise of China, who really do present a big, we've described it as epoch-defining change to the world. And Britain and the United Kingdom and our allies must be ready for that.
Well, Rear Admiral Chris Parry has told GB News that for too long, the UK Armed Forces have been transmitting weakness to opponents and need to be far quicker in adapting to new technological, easy for you to say, technological advances in warfare. Here's our security editor, Mark White.
Like the other branches of the UK's armed services, the Royal Navy's capabilities have been hollowed out by successive governments. With far fewer ships and personnel, and concerns those we have are underarmed and overworked. The pride of the fleet, the two Elizabeth-class aircraft carriers, are impressive. But there are serious concerns we won't now buy enough F-35 stealth combat jets to properly man them. The Defence Secretary will have a far more optimistic message for the first Sea Lords annual conference. With defence spending on the increase and 28 new ships and submarines either under construction or being planned, we are, Grant Shapps will say, entering a golden era of shipbuilding for the Navy. But according to one former senior naval commander, these new vessels could be obsolete before they even enter service, unless defence chiefs and politicians are much more ambitious in adopting technological advances more rapidly than at present.
Technology is basically expanding and accelerating at a tremendous rate right now, and we have to have the systems and the programs in place that can absorb these technologies and insert those technologies into whatever platform we think we need to use to threaten and project force.
The Navy is trialling new unmanned systems for the likes of the carriers and for the subsurface fleet. But compared to our opponents, Chris Parry believes the UK is constantly playing catch-up.
There's this ignorance, complacency, and it will never happen to us, I'm afraid, that prevails at the moment. Democracies plan for peacetime and say they'll adapt for wartime. In the modern world, we're not going to have the time to adapt. We're going to have to go with what we've got. And if you've got everything in the locker in the front line, you're going to deter.
The war in Ukraine and the current conflict in the Middle East has shown just how quickly technologies can advance and adapt. A more resilient Royal Navy, Chris Parry believes, will be one that doesn't just learn to quickly harness such advances, but just as rapidly develops the systems to be able to combat those new weapons. Mark White, GB News.
Let us know what you have to say on all of that. Get in touch with us today. Andrew and Bev coming up next, but we're at gbnews.com/have your say.
So what have you got for us? Andrew and Bev joining us in the studio.
She's back.
You're back, looking very bronzed and well deserved too.
Well, it's good to be back. We've got a great show. We've got Miriam Cates live on the show this morning. Yeah. She feels very passionate about the impact of smartphones and social media.
So do I.
On kids, so do I.
Yeah.
And a lot of our viewers, especially grandparents as well, see it when the kids come round to the house and they're all sat there on a phone.
What age do you bring them?
16.
I think
that should be the law.
So I think some people would argue it should be lower.
Yeah, but I think they're wrong. I think we just look at all the harms and issues and the lack of maturity pre-16 to cope with everything that's out there. It was like 100 years ago, we used to give people gin, and we now know that's stupid.
So why not stop them having them from 14?
Well, yeah, absolutely. 14, 16, whatever it might be. Yeah, I see what you mean.
And we're also talking about Just Stop Oil. Lord Olney's report about should they be regarded as a terrorist organisation. It's all about the changing definition of terrorism to stop some of these marches. Slippery slope?
Yeah, it worries me a little bit, I think that. And also about whether MPs, if they're arrested, should be forced to basically step aside.
Suspended immediately. So if you think about Andrew Rosendale, as a Romford MP, banned from Parliament for 2 years, no charges were ever brought against him. He didn't do his job properly for 2 years, couldn't do his job properly. He wasn't allowed to...
No democracy in that, is there? And it's very easy to then make allegations and get rid of political opponents.
MPs, actually, because they are fair game, aren't they?
But then I suppose there's an argument, perhaps, if they're charged, if they're found guilty of something, then absolutely. But
of course. But it went through by one vote last night on the deciding vote of Natalie Elphick MP, whose own husband went to prison for 2 years for sexual offences, and she attacked his victims. Extraordinary.
And she didn't show up to the first Labour meeting in her constituency last night, apparently.
Funny that. Funny that.
All right, well, we're looking forward to the show, as always. Thank you both.
As some of you may know, we have been nominated for Best News Programme category and Best News Presenter at the Television, Radio and Industry Clubs. And the main thing is we need you to take part. We could do with your help to win, folks. So we beg you, we plead with you. All you've got to do is head to poll-trick All the details are there also on other GB News programmes. And if you scan that little logo on your screen now, it will open up the Trick website for you and show you the categories that you can vote in. So you're looking for Best Presenter and Best Breakfast Show, I think. So vote now and vote often. Thank you very much indeed.
And you give, then we give. Time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to enjoy a spectacular summer with an extra £20,000 in cash in your bank account. It is our biggest cash prize of the year so far, and here's how it could be yours.
You really could be our next big winner with an incredible £20,000 in tax-free cash to play with this summer. What would you spend that on? Well, whilst you're thinking about it, listen to some of our previous winners getting that winning phone call from us.
I'm Charles. I'm on £18,000 cash. It was just amazing, and as soon as it goes into your bank account, it just changed. It's a life-changing thing. Just go for it. It's an absolute must. You must try and go for it.
The next winning call could be answered by you. For another chance to win £20,000 in tax-free cash, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB05 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 31st of May. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Excellent. And we hope it's a farmer that wins out there, because they could certainly do with some help and a handshake for various things. And thanks to what they're doing, the Prime Minister's invited a lot of them to Downing Street today to show his thanks and to hopefully show them how they can make money in the days, months and years to come.
Yeah, and coming up we'll be hearing hopefully from Doogie Beattie, who'll be looking at the issue of farming, and we'll be talking about the Ozempic weight loss jab and how it could revolutionise health, heart health is what I'm trying to say. All that and more in a second.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threat and so on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me. My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Rishi Sunak has come out fighting and declared war on what he's called the UK's sick note culture. The country's welfare state bill costs the average taxpayer now £2,000 every single year for every British taxpayer. Astonishing numbers, Catherine, simply mind-bending. 69 billion quid every year now goes on benefits. I paid my tax bill last month. Where did your tax go? I clicked on it. Long-term sickness and benefits is now second only to the NHS on what we spend our tax pound on. This is simply unsustainable.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister said. 69 billion a year on long-term sick and disability benefits, projected to rise to 90 billion by the end of the next Parliament if nothing has done. As he said, it is totally, totally unsustainable. And the message from Rishi Sunak really is tough love. You're going to take your medicine. It's going to be good for you. You may not like it. Let's have a look at what he had to say earlier.
Everyone with the potential should be supported. And not just to earn, but to contribute and belong. And we must never tolerate barriers that hold people back from making their contribution and from sharing in that sense of self-worth that comes from feeling part of being something bigger than ourselves. And that is why this is a moral mission, and why the value of work is so central to my vision for welfare reform.
Certainly, Rishi Sunak said in the speech, in the period since the pandemic, something has gone wrong. Of course, millions of people had their wages paid by furlough. Now, that was an entirely artificial situation in an exceptional circumstance, but quite a lot of people left the workplace and simply haven't come back.
Are the newspapers getting you down?
My wife didn't divorce me that month.
Struggling to separate the wheat from the chaff?
I know that it's a bit of a circus at the best of times.
Well, don't worry, Headliners has got you covered. We'll take the burden of reading the day's news, and if we get depressed, who cares? It's an occupational hazard, frankly. That's Headliners on GB News from 11 p.m. till midnight, and the following morning, 5 till 6 a.m. on GB News, the comedy channel. Nah, just kidding. Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thanks for your comments on lots of things we've been talking about today. Les says, we fill our homes with cheap rubbish from China online, while our high street and retail centres are dying. That's a good point. Livy says, the Northern Ireland situation about the Rwanda deal. Northern Ireland has just invited every illegal immigrant to their shores. Someone will regret highlighting this. I think that could well be the case. It's not over. The government have leave to appeal against this, so we'll see what happens on that front.
We've also been talking about farming this morning. The Prime Minister is welcoming farmers into number 10 Downing Street for the second UK Farm to Fork Summit.
I have to say, if you're watching Clarkson's Farm, have you watched the new series?
Not the new series, but I have watched lots of it and read lots of commentary.
There's a wee bit in it that's about piggies. Piggies which are cute and lovely, and different sort of piggies. They're very nice and cuddly looking.
And then the piggies go to market.
And they die.
Yeah, well,
they die.
You eat bacon.
Die in it, but you got to pay for your bacon. And as the government has announced, support measures to help farmers are quite complicated. Are they getting enough? And they are at Downing Street today, and the government is there trying to make them feel welcome. But Dougie Beattie now reports on the fact that the real problems farmers face in the UK are not going to be easy to solve.
To those not involved in the industry, a picture-perfect spring day masks the problems that lie behind our multi-billion-pound agri-sector. For the last decade, farming has faced its biggest challenges, and most of those came from the environmental legislation and hidden taxation. When the UK left the EU, many of those government departments stayed close to the workflows and legislation that was set in Europe and changed the single farm payment to a reward scheme rather than subsidy. These policies have caused problems throughout the EU. In Germany alone, over 2,300 farmers have decided to leave the industry. The culling of cattle and wilding of land has saw a substantial drop in productivity as a drive towards lower carbon and methane targets are enforced. Environmental policies around the cleaning of drains has meant that the water tables have stayed high, and in this last year not only land but towns have faced flooding, and the algae is now appearing in our waterways. The sodden ground has meant that slurry storage is now at maximum capacity, and the first cut of silage will be smaller than usual, meaning that winter feed costs will rise even further. In the northeast of England, many of the winter wheat and barley fields have been washed out, and now the expensive reseeding process must begin once more. Rising energy costs have placed pressures on refrigeration, meaning that the storage of products such as potatoes is no longer financially viable. Grants and tax incentives for tree planting schemes has saw many tenant farmers leave an industry where the average working week is 72 hours. If the Prime Minister is to offer real help to farmers, he must look at how his targets will reflect on cash flow and stop rising input costs that have risen to over 35% in the last 2 years. Doogie Beattie, GB News.
Terrible.
72-hour working week. And I always think on Christmas Day or when people go off on their summer holidays, you just can't do that as a farmer. You can't leave your cattle, you can't leave your crops untended to unless you have people that can do it for you.
No days off?
It's a vocation, no days off, it's hard work, and then you're basically totally at the mercy of the weather, as again Clarkson's farm so well demonstrates. I recently started a veg patch, which has become a little bit of an obsession of mine, and it's hard. It's hard growing vegetables, and you know, potatoes are really, really key. You get too much water, too much sunlight, it can all go wrong. And obviously, these guys are trying to do it on a mass scale and get a good price for it. It's difficult.
Well, a groundbreaking study has found that weight loss drugs like Ozempic can reduce the risk of heart and stroke risk by a fifth. Have a look at this report.
Well, it sounds exciting. I mean, obviously, we know that obesity and cardiovascular disease is a major impact on our patients' lives and a major cost to the health economy. So any reduction and protection for our patients, absolutely welcome. There are a number of considerations. Obviously, looking at the study, which has just been out in the press today, it looks like about 1.5 patients per 100 per year would have a reduction in cardiovascular events. That's really worth having. But there do need to be balances made with the drug, both in terms of potential side effects that it might have, particularly gastric side effects, and also the other big issue that some of the side effects, well, to explain the drug, it works by mimicking chemicals in the body that increase our insulin production and slow down the emptying of the stomach. So some of the main side effects patients might get is gastric side effects with bloating and even potentially blockage of the gut and inflammation of the pancreas gland. So that always needs to be balanced with any patients taking the medication, which is why the medication really would be a specialist-only medication with careful consideration of the patients, balancing their potential benefits and potential risks. The other big issue with the medication I would like to highlight is the availability of it. I mean, we've used it for a while with our diabetic patients, but this has been a newer indication using it for weight loss.
Well, thank you to the good doctor there. And on the subject of farming, we talk about food there and what we eat. Penny says we definitely need to become much more self-sufficient for fruit and vegetables in this country. France is totally self-sufficient. No more imported fruit there. No rewilding, just more food. Use of polytunnels for our unpredictable weather. As there, well, we should buy British, and in-season imported fruit and veg is held in storage forever.
Yeah, John says we're importing too much food because of the level of migration into this country where people will not eat British food, and we still like to carry on eating their own food.
Duncan says, I live in the Garden of England, which has been devastated by the Common Agricultural Policy. Farmers were paid to put land out of use, and it has never been replaced, so we produce almost no fruit compared with 40 years ago. I mean, yes, I remember, recently I went to Guernsey, and I used to remember Guernsey and Jersey as the home of tomatoes.
Yeah.
No chance. They don't grow them there now.
Such a shame, isn't it? And then they all come from Morocco, and then they get snow, and it's panic stations.
They come from Morocco or parts of Spain or whatever, and so all the traditional places for this no longer. So it is. I mean, I go back to the whole thing. The world is just a mess. It's a complete mess, and the UK seems to be particularly messed up, it has to be said. Let us know your views and we'll reflect those throughout our programme tomorrow. You get in touch with us the usual way, and that is, Isabel?
gbnews.com/you'll Have a fabulous day.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. A dull and a damp day for many today, but it will be brighter compared to yesterday in parts of Wales and southwest England, and northern Scotland again doing OK for some warm sunshine here. But sunshine in short supply today over southern Scotland, northern and eastern parts of England, North Wales too, staying pretty dull and pretty damp throughout, maybe brightening up at times across the east coast of England. Much brighter compared to yesterday for Wales and southwest England, some sunny spells here, but possibility of 1 or 2 sharp showers. Feeling warmer here as well, but for most under the cloud and rain, feeling cooler. But northern Scotland, look at that, a bit of sunshine in the Moray Firth. Could see temperatures easily into the low 20s. The rain will continue to drift into parts of western Scotland, southern Scotland, the far north of England, staying pretty damp well into this evening. But further south, the rain should generally peter out. A few more showers milling into parts of Devon, Cornwall and Pembrokeshire. Quite a mild night again. Temperatures holding up 11 or 12 Celsius in towns and cities. On to Wednesday, and it could again be pretty drab over some eastern coastal counties of England. Grey here with rain and drizzle on and off. The Fret and the Har may return to eastern Scotland. It's a bit brighter over the Midlands, northwest England and southwest Scotland compared to today. Again, western Scotland seeing some good spells of sunshine. Just 1 or 2 scattered showers in the southwest. And in the sunny spells, feeling quite warm. Goodbye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Morning.
Very good morning. What should the definition of terrorism be? Should it include Just Stop Oil protesters?
Yeah, and Rishi Sunak says better the devil you know, so trust him, particularly on issues like defence and security.
And lots of MPs now are getting behind this idea that we should be cracking down on smartphones with children. We're going to be talking to Miriam Cates from the House of Commons. Don't go anywhere.
The latest GB News travel.
Good morning, I'm Russell Holding. The M65 in Lancashire is partly blocked westbound by an accident between junctions 10 and 9 near Burnley, causing delays. On the M62 in Greater Manchester, the inside lane's closed eastbound after an accident between junctions 21 and 22 from Milnrow to Rishworth Moor, causing queues. On the M4 in Carmarthenshire, the outside lane's closed westbound, where a van's broken down at junction 49 for the Pont Abraham roundabout, causing queues. In Newport, the A48's closed southbound from junction 24 of the M4 at the Cauldre to the Hartridge Farm roundabout after an accident yesterday afternoon, causing queues. The M1 in London's partly blocked southbound by an accident just after the London Gateway services, with queues from junction 4 at Edgware. On the M25 in Hertfordshire, 2 lanes are closed anti-clockwise just after junction 25 for the A10, where someone's broken down. No queues from junction 27 for the M11. In Devon, the A30's closed in Sheraton Bishop and the Alphington Junction after an accident. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
The International Monetary Fund has estimated that Russia will outgrow all advanced economies in 2024. This is in spite of all the sanctions the West has imposed on Russia, in spite of its removal of the SWIFT banking system, in spite of the fact that Germany has almost entirely weaned itself off Russian gas, and in spite of the 50,000 soldiers who have died and the endless resources it has poured into the Ukraine war. So, what are we missing here? Why is Russia going to grow more than the rest of us? Well, it's simple. Russia is willing to make use of its own energy resources to provide abundant supply to its citizens. Increased supply means lower prices, and cheap energy is inextricably linked to economic growth. But since 2008, the United States has grown at twice the rate of the United Kingdom. The big difference is that America has much lower energy prices, while the UK insists on masochistic green policies. But it's no surprise that the Green fanatics in the Scottish government, where they know how to